do something, normally he does it in pretty spectacular style.
Yeah.
So I remember 2 years ago, he turned up outside Clacton Pier in a tank. So we can expect a bit more of that. We can see massive grassroots campaigns. I've spoken to friends of mine from across the country, and they're all planning on coming down to Clacton, which is a brilliant summer holiday, by the way. So I know I live there, but it is fantastic, especially in August. And I can absolutely see the press back jumping on it, because what's a holiday like a holiday by the British seaside?
Well, indeed, absolutely right. Well, a lot of people can't afford to go much further, to be honest, nowadays under the Labour government. So, and what about Binface? Is he known down there? Did he run in the last election against?
Binface. No, I'm not entirely sure if he ran in the last election. I think he ran against Keir Starmer. I think typically his style is to run against the likely PM.
Yeah.
But look, he's going to be nothing more than a protest vote. He's a joke candidate. And if it's a Farage versus Binface contest, if he can capture, if Farage can get 80% of the vote and Binface can get 20%, that is probably the best result that old Binface can expect. He's a joke candidate for a reason. Well, I mean, the established parties have pulled out, so maybe they think this joke candidate is better than the joke candidate that they put up. But no, obviously he doesn't stand a chance. I don't know of many people in Clacton that know him. They'll probably get to know him.
Yeah.
But the campaign effort is going to be reasonably minimal. I'm quite excited to see if I get Binface leaflet in. Would be quite interesting to see. But, no, he's not going to have.
He's one of these guys, a bit predictable, a bit kind of led by donkeys, I think.
He is a
bit sort of soft left, kind of bit of a wally. Not really very interesting. Not as edgy as he likes to think he is, really. Ted, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Ted Newson there on Clacton, the town that is his home, and how the people there are going to react to the by-election, which is obviously going to be held, if it goes ahead, sooner rather than later, in probably second week of August, by what we're being told, August the 8th possibly, whatever the Thursday is. Ted, of course, also for the Global Warming Policy Foundation. We've got time for a Pooch's Pooch?
We have.
Let's do it. That's great. I love a great day. They're amazing, aren't they?
I can feel it everywhere. She just was a little kid.
Come on, no.
What?
Got great faces.
What do you want?
Minnie, please give it for free. Ow!
She got it.
You pulled my hair out!
No!
That shithead even went through the jacket.
Brilliant. Great Danes. I mean, God, imagine what they eat. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Well, it has been a great show, so thank you to all of you for your lovely comments and for all of your thoughts and opinions that you've been giving us. Great show, Mike. I love Jacob and Sarah. They speak so much sense and are clear, so I can understand, says Irene. Thank you, Irene, for that. Jacob Rees-Mogg, class. Hope you get more subs after that. Well, he is class, Jacob. He's a fantastic man, and very fair-minded as well. Morning all. Mike, all the lovely ladies you've had on your show this morning are very intelligent. Why can't the Labour Party get any intelligent ones, says Stephen? Well, that's a very good question. And clearly the Labour ladies are not very bright, but neither are the blokes, to be honest. I totally agree, says Sue. These guests are top class for sure. Well, thank you very much for that. I should also tell you that over the course of the last 24 hours, not only have we produced two brilliant shows, two fantastic Kelvin MacKenzie shows, and of course two Mark Littlewood shows, but we've also put out an episode of The Thought Police, a new version of The Thought Police with myself and Lewis Schaefer. We haven't got a clip, I don't think, but we may be able to show you the picture of the two of us looking dapper. Have we got that? We haven't got that either.
Tell them to go to the Thought Police YouTube channel.
So the Thought Police YouTube channel, which I think is the thoughtpolice.com, is it?
The Thought Police Online, I think.
The Thought Police Online. There you go. The Thought Police Online. It's me and Lewis Schaefer there in a sort of black and white image of the two of us. We recorded it yesterday. It's episode 1. It's out now. It's on YouTube. And it may actually be possible that you can make it into a podcast. I've got to talk to Pooch about that.
Yeah, we will.
I've got some news on that front,
Okay.
which I need to tell you about, which I discovered yesterday. But it's coming up to 10 o'clock. There'll be Edward Hughes with the news. Kelvin MacKenzie taking over next door from 10 o'clock. I'm sure he's going to have a great show because there's so much to talk about. And he's going to have a lot to say about the whole business with Harry and the Daily Mail as well, because it's right up his strata. I will meanwhile see you tomorrow at 7 a.m. sharp.
Click the redirect, Mike, to go over to Kelvin.
Click the redirect. UK Live is where it is, where you can find it. And just go straight over there and you'll be able to plug straight in. And I'm going to go around and have a word with him as well. So if you want to see what I've got to say to him, keep it UK Live online and we'll see you in a minute.
Hi there, I'm Edward Hughes with your news. Nigel Farage dramatically quits Parliament amid a cheeky little donation scandal involving a fraudster mate. Hi there, I'm Edward Hughes with your news. Nigel Farage dramatically quits Parliament amid a cheeky little donation scandal involving a fraudster mate, then immediately calls a by-election so he can heroically battle the establishment, which conveniently is now too scared to even show up and fight him. Classic Nige. Turning oops undeclared gifts into a revolutionary triumph. Meanwhile, Prince Harry's back in London for Invictus stuff.
Yeah, hi there. Good morning. Belting show coming up over the next couple of hours. We have all kinds of goodies. My first guest is going to be chatting with me about Nigel Farage and his future. I remain intensely gloomy about what's going to happen to Nigel. I've known the guy for 3 or 4 decades, in good times and in bad, and I think he's made an error. And the way I see it planning out is, yes, the by-election may happen. The problem still exists for him. As you probably already know, he can still face some kind of discipline from a parliamentary committee. So on that basis, he will come back, and then what will happen? I suspect he will then be disciplined again, i.e. banned. And so he banned, there's another by-election, the thing's a farce. He finally says, I don't want to stand for a second time or a third time in 2 years it'll be, and he will then walk away from leadership of Reform and leave it a couple of years, and then with a year to go to the election, general election, he'll come back again. In the meantime, what you will have seen is a collapse of Reform from, say 24 down to about 16, something like that. And when he comes back, that 8% or 10% will come back. So he'll, and the other thing is he'll be able to write down everything that he's got on that now. So he'll be able to say, well, I've got 5 million, I've got 5 houses, I do this with gold, I do this with this, and all the rest of it. Okay, and that will be acceptable. So I am, now the thing that worries me, the thing I don't like about that, is that you are being disenfranchised. But I would never advocate going to Restore. Having spent an hour with him on UK Live, I was not impressed by Rupert Lowe, who I thought was overbearing and was not somebody I'd like to see run our country. Secondly, I can't say yes to the Tories. The Tories have been an effing disaster, and one of the effects of it is, this is why Reform are doing so well. They're offering a solution to migration, which is a big problem for around 25 to 30% of the country, which is a big shout. And clearly Labour are going to be a disaster. Who's going to speak for us? Who is going to speak for us if there isn't Nigel Farage around? And in a sense, I think Nigel knows that. So he knows he can go away, come back again, and he'll still be a huge name, in my view. I am told by everybody around Farage that it's not quite as unhinged, but for the first time, there is another side to Nigel Farage. He likes a laugh, likes a drink, likes a cigarette, likes the voter. There is no natural bad temper in Nigel Farage. For the first time, I've had reports of bad temper, irritability. I know that the 5 houses story in the Times triggered him off into outer space. He was really massively aggravated by that. I would say to Nigel, I think as Enoch Powell first said, he said, you are, if you're a politician, you can't complain about the press. It's like a captain complaining about the sea. They're not on your side. During a golden period, they say nice things about you, and then they discover something in which you don't emerge too well. They publish that. You then hate the press. Just have to get on with it. Just suck it up. Joining me now, after flogging himself to death in front of his actually very large audience, Mike Graham. Morning, Mike.
Very good morning to you.
So, your view, does Nigel survive or not survive?
I think he does. I think I was talking to David Maddox this morning, Independent's political editor, who disagrees and thinks that he's made a mistake, thinks that he should have stuck it out and waited for the proper by-election to be called. The thing that I find interesting is that everyone in Westminster seems to think that there would be automatically a by-election, presuming that they all automatically think that he wouldn't pass the smell test with the Standards Committee. I don't know how they know that, right? Other than the fact that there's been a rumour going around that the Speaker's been supposedly suggesting that there's going to be a by-election. I don't know how he knows that. So there seems to be obviously a decision that's been made at Reform headquarters where they've gone, all right, well, this could do 2 things. If we do a by-election now, it slightly takes the shine off the Standards Committee one, if there is another one, because that will be the second by-election. And he obviously wins this one because nobody's standing next to him. He's not going to lose it,
so
is he?
You believe that if there is a second, right, so we have, I don't know when the by-election will be,
They reckon
middle
August,
of September.
August the 8th, they're saying, if they can get it
or
right.
it's in August,
Yeah.
okay, fine. And then it's announced, whatever, and somebody, I read somewhere that it won't be till potentially even October that the Standards Committee come back and say, right, and it's more than 10 days, and somebody then says, right, there should be another by-election. So you're saying he would then stand in one more by-election?
I think he would, yeah, because I don't think he thinks he's ever going to lose Clacton. I don't think he's going to lose Clacton. I mean, if it's only him and Count Binface in this first one, then he obviously wins that. And I think all of the people at Westminster saying he's going to look a bit stupid, it'll be a bit of a Pyrrhic victory. I don't agree. I think they're going to look stupid because they're not taking part in the process.
So we now have a second by-election, okay, which is, I find that, personally, I find that unacceptable, okay. I quite understand his...
What you mean as a waste of time?
Yes.
Yeah.
I quite understand why he wants to do it, right? I kind of object to the kind of gerrymandering of
well, he
it
might
all.
not want to do the second one. He might say, well, hang on a minute, I've just had a by-election. Why would I need to do another one?
No, but that won't be in his gift because the voters can actually decide if the parliamentary people are serious about him and say you've got to be suspended for more than 10 days, which...
Yeah, I presumed you were.
I was waiting for the conversation to get to that point. Ultimately...
Be going out. Can you get rid of that? Thank you. So we come at it from two different... I don't doubt he remains as popular, in 4 months' time as he is right now. That is not my point.
Right.
My point is another one, really, which is that I can't imagine the press. My experience of media is that once they get a sniff, right, they see some blood, they pursue it from all different angles. And if there's more stories that come out, we're not quite like America. America is such a big place that actually vast parts of the country don't even know what's going on and not particularly interested. Over here, we're just a small country. I just wonder how much personal what he views as abuse, which the media would say was investigation, he can take.
Yes, well, that's true. And I think he has kind of drawn a line in the sand on that, hasn't he? Because I think also by saying what he said yesterday, there were some people who thought that he might just call it a day and just say, look, I've had enough of this. I don't need it. I've got plenty of money. I don't need to actually be in the spotlight like
He's certainly
this.
got 5 million anyway.
He may have that. He may have spent it on Ferraris. We don't know. But the thing is that, he, I think, has kind of put a little bit of a stopper on some of those investigations, possibly, because they're clearly, again, taking a sort of Trumpian view of it, saying it's fake news, that they've got no business knocking on the door of my daughter. There are things, I think, that the Times, I was on my way in today listening to Times Radio. They were putting up the Sunday Times editor on Times Radio to talk about some of their techniques, how they do things. So they're clearly a bit concerned about it as well, because let's face it, papers now are not the way they are when you and I were in them, where it was sort of like the Wild West, wasn't it? Heaven forbid you're knocking on the door of somebody who might not be involved in the story, really. Shocking. But they can't do that anymore because they've got all sorts of regulations. And I think he's taken a bit of a gamble that he might be more popular than the press on this one.
Oh yeah, no, there is no doubt. Well, actually, that would be astonishing if there hasn't been a politician more popular than the media.
Yeah.
Look, so we come at things from different directions. I can't envisage a set of circumstances where there can be a second by-election and more investigations into his finances in which he will want to survive.
Right.
And that's where I see it. I do see him coming back again. By the way. I don't see this as the end of his career or anything.
Right.
Okay, and he can go to America and be paid $100,000 per speech and be treated as a king, right? If he wants to be. I think that is what he would do. And actually, I would advise him to do that. I would not advise him to go down. I'm just pointing out, I have never seen Nigel Farage lose his temper. I've never known him. There is some stuff floating around. He got enormously, massively aggravated by the Five Houses story. Seriously bent out of shape, firing off very strange texts to people all over the show. That is not him.
It's not, but equally, that's a kind of a weird. If you analyse the stories themselves, if you were sitting in the editor's chair and going, so what's the story then, to the news editor, and he goes, well, Farage has got 5 houses. Now you might go, all right, so he's got 5 houses.
No, you would go, so I would say, really, 5 houses?
Yeah.
He's supposed to be skinned. These houses, a house in Tandridge, right? I know compared to you, it's probably quite a small thing, but Tandridge in Surrey is a very nice area, and he's got a £1.5–2 million house. He's supposed to be skinned. Look, I'm in favour of him having houses. But you can't butter your toast both sides. Yeah, but you can't say you're skint one minute and have 5 houses the next.
I don't remember him saying he was skint. I've known him a long time, and he's never appeared to be skint to me. He might have been saying he was skint, but maybe the reason for that so that you could get £5 million from someone. But he's never struck me as a bloke who's been skint. This is a guy who has been in the city for quite a long time.
Yeah, that is true.
And you might have had to lose quite a lot of money to be skint from the 80s when everyone was making. He's admitted himself he made shed loads of money doing that.
Yes, it's true. Although I've been to his house in Down in Kent, which is right next to the pub, so he doesn't have far to stumble. And that was quite a modest house for it. Look, at the end of it all, he's a politician. If it's you've got 5 houses, you've got 50 houses, it doesn't matter, okay? The issue is, do people believe that there is a sniff test which he may have failed?
Well, I go slightly different route. I think that there is a sniff test in journalism that fails where he fails, but actually out there in the real world, where people, actually look up to politicians like him because they do think he's different.
Of which I'm one.
Yeah, and I think there is an awful lot of hypocrisy in the journalistic trade these days, and the kinds of people that detest him and despise him, as old Gabriel Pogrund has said, he despises him in a tweet. they genuinely kind of turn their noses up at him, and they think he's gauche, they think he's racist, they think he's horrible.
Okay,
so everything that he's got, they think he shouldn't have.
Okay, let me ask you this then. By the way, is Jake Willis Simons coming on in a second? Okay, let me ask you this. What did you make of the Sunday Times story?
The most recent one?
Right, yes, the one involving Posh George and all that.
Well, to be honest, it was nothing I hadn't read before. I didn't think there was much to it. Right. Everybody knows that George Cottrell's been his friend for a long time. Everybody knows that George Cottrell, he wrote a book, How to Launder Money, which actually wasn't a book about boasting that he laundered money. It was an actual book he wrote with an FBI investigator on how to stop people laundering money, based on some of the things that he knew. So he's a very charming. He's a very interesting guy.
Have you ever met him?
Yeah, I know.
Right.
I mean, his mother used to date Prince Andrew, right? He was raised in Mustique in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
He's absolutely loaded with money. And I think his dad...
Is he loaded or is he skinned?
He's loaded.
Right.
Yeah. He has a domicile in Montenegro, which is a tax haven.
So, okay, well, the thing that I found strange in that story actually involved Posh George himself.
Yeah.
In which he's got an £8.5 million house in Chelsea or somewhere like that. And the way that deal was done, it was done offshore with Nick Candy.
Yeah.
Nick Candy said Posh George owed him some money.
Right.
Plus, they gave him a shareholding in some rather curious offshore vehicle, right? Because when you look online, there was no money changed hands on the house in the UK. Now, the point I'm making is, I'm sure it's legitimate, right? I just have never seen anybody buy a house like that before.
Nick Candy, who just sold a house for, what was it, 127 million, right? Which was once his home with Holly Valance. This is kind of supermarkets, tabloid stuff, isn't it? Yeah. It's fascinating, and a lot of people go, it's so far off where you and I are and where most people are, that it's kind of like a fairy tale. You just kind of go, well, I guess that's what people like that do.
Isn't it true that we bumped into somebody, we won't go into who it is, at a do on Sunday, who was connected with Reform, and he/she indicated to us that it was basically Reform was now a boys' club, and that anybody who offered any other thought process was actually gently shown the door.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, we'll see you later. Yeah, I mean, I imagine that's right.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. Anyway, look, I tell you what, thank you very much indeed, Mike. We come at this from completely different ways, which is the joy of UK Live and why the audience, especially your audience, is going through the roof.
It's
so
good.
Well done to you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have. We thought we'd keep the conversation on Farage going because he does matter. He is like 5-6 points, 4, 5, 6 points ahead of any other party, and therefore, if he says I'm doing X, I'm doing Y, actually it matters, right? I am not in favour of the potential of 2 by-elections at Clacton coming up over the next 6 months. I think that would be a form of gerrymandering, which I think is dangerous. But joining me right now is Jake. Now, Jake has written great stuff over the years and has very strong views on this matter. Morning to you, Jake.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, fine, man. So your view, tell me, so I am enormously concerned. I'm not quite sure how Farage actually survives all this, one way or the other. I'm not saying in the short term, I'm looking in the longer term. What's your position on this, Jake?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I feel, I guess, this morning more disappointed than anything else. I mean, I'm not a Reform supporter. I'm not a member of the Tory party either, but I'm certainly one of those who wants a party of the right to rescue us from this dreadful left administration that's driving Britain into the ground. And if we have more of the same after the next general election, I really fear for the future of our country. And instead, so we look at the parties of the right, and particularly Reform, which is, as you said, has been ahead in the polls for such a long time. I think Farage said 300 odd polls in a row has been topping, has been topped by Reform, and yet all this sleaze seems to be coming out, and the response has been really such a disappointment, so deplorable, I think, frankly, because journalists have been thrown under the bus here. I mean, they're trying to turn. I mean, there are some serious questions to be answered about Farage's finances, and I say that with regret. I mean, he very kindly endorsed my book. I quite like the man, and yet there are serious questions to be answered. His company is very pro-crypto. He's taken a lot of money from crypto people. That's the nub of the thing. And yet he seems to be leading this campaign to turn parliamentary standards against Farage's finances into the people versus the establishment. And the way of doing that is to whip up all this fervour against journalists who are doing their job. I mean, that door knock at one of Farage's properties was just classic journalism. Of course, I mean, as you know, far better than me as well as anybody else. You know, we've both done hundreds of door knocks in our time. I did when I was at the Daily Mail and Telegraph and elsewhere. That's what you do when you're investigating a story. You go and knock on a door, find out what's going on. And if they tell you to go away, you go away. You don't hound them. I mean, this isn't Princess Diana. This is knocking at the door of one of Farage's houses to see who lived there. And it's important because if his daughter was living there, then he doesn't need to declare it to Parliament on his registered member's interest. So it's pertinent to the story. And as it turned out, somebody else was living there as well. There are questions over that. But this is, journalistic investigation that you should expect if you're running for the highest office in the land or intending to be Prime Minister one day. You should expect that level of scrutiny. That's what a free society is. And to kind of try and take the heat off his own finances by putting it on journalists doing their job and presenting this all as, the outsiders against the establishment is totally wrong. And I think really, really corrosive to our democracy.
Right. So I buy that. I buy that. My issue is coming at a slightly different position now, is that if, for instance, Farage does throw himself under a bus, there is 25% of the country who are looking to him and only to him, because they have the choice of the Tories or they have the choice of Restore or whatever. They have sticking by Farage through thick and thin, ups and downs, who would feel that they have nowhere else to go. And where, you see, because he deals and has always dealt with it, to give him his credit, with the migration aspect of it. Now, I'm not sure how tough he's going to be, but however tough he's going to be better than the Tories, okay? And he's tried quite hard of late, probably to his own personal expense, to actually bring in other people from the right, i.e. from the Tory right, right? Where on earth, Jake, are we supposed to go? Look, if you take somebody like me, I'm half a Tory and I like reform because of the migration. So I spend my time flip-flopping like this, okay? Where am I going to go? Badenoch doesn't buy the reform view of migration. So what are we going to do?
Listen, Kelvin, I mean, you've articulated exactly my feelings as well. I just feel in despair at the state of the right in Britain. Right now, Britain's in a terrible state. I mean, look at just our defence alone. We're totally vulnerable to attack. We haven't had this weakened armed forces since the 1930s, before we rearmed to fight Hitler. Our Royal Navy hasn't been this weak since it was first established by King Henry VIII. I mean, we're in a terrible state in that way. Our welfare bill is higher than it's ever been in history by some measures. Our economy is in the tubes. Our public life is dominated by identity politics and progressive activism. Even flying the flag is controversial these days. Women, trans women are women, and women can have penises now. The whole thing, the whole culture is sliding into decline. And we need a proper party of the right to rescue us from our fate. And what do we have? This absolute disaster, the implosion of reform, which had been such a great hope for the right over the past year or two, is beginning to eat itself with infighting. I mean, Jacob Rees-Mogg did a video yesterday where he said that a lot of this stuff had been leaked from within reform to journalists in this kind of furious infighting and kind of backstabbing that seems to be dominating internal politics at reform right now. Nobody knows what they're doing. There's a total lack of professionalism, total lack of unity. I mean, the Makerfield by-election had a candidate who hadn't even had his social media vetted. It's like a clown show over there, and it's letting the country down. Now, in terms of the Tories, I mean, you're right, 14 years of failure, we all know about that. Right now, Kemi, I think, is doing a brilliant job. I mean, certainly she's rising in her popularity in the polls. But in terms of the party at large, you've only got her and Nick Timothy, both very decent political figures. And after that, nobody knows who else is in the Tory party, let alone whether it's worth voting for. There's still this leftist problem of the Tory wets that's sort of hanging around the party. She hasn't managed to turn its fortunes around yet, although it's a work in progress. Is that going to be, electable as a party of the right at the next general election if Farage implodes? Like you, I just don't know. It's an absolutely tragic situation, and the country just is desperate for something better.
Okay, supposing we work on the assumption that it follows my view that Farage does go, lies low for a couple of years, comes back, right? He doesn't lie all that low, but he lies lowish, right? Picking up, doing a Boris, basically, wandering around the world, making quite a few bob for himself, which is good luck to him. Okay, then comes back. Okay, but in that meantime, you've got 2 years. You've got to have another leader, right? If you so you're sitting there. I don't even know if they've got how they carry out their potential change of leadership. Who would you have? I would go for a Lee Anderson figure only because I'm sure that it would be fantastic. Lots of ups and downs, but at least I would think he was kosher in some way, right? Well, I mean, these guys. Who would you bet on?
Well, there's quite a lot of talent, I think, in the top tier of reform. In my view, they've all rather tarnished themselves by going out to bat in this rather shameless attempt at Trump-style politics of, flooding the zone, as it's called, as Steve Bannon used to call it, putting out a whole load of crap there to try to deflect from the main problem. So I think that really hasn't covered them in any glory at all. But that aside, and aside from the fact that the party itself is problematic and unprofessional and so on, I mean, look, you've got Richard Tice, who's a very effective operator, who's led the party before, of course, who's perhaps a familiar face to the public. I mean, no one's as familiar or popular as Farage by a long stretch, but he's kind of familiar. He's on GB News a lot and so on. I mean, you've got Jenrick and Suella Braverman, who came over from the Tories recently. I think the fact that they clung on to the Tory party for so long...
That can't happen, Jake. That can't happen, man. Honestly, that would cause a big problem. And then somebody that I wouldn't buy, I think Rupert Lowe would then benefit. And I'm not in favour of that.
Yeah, that you're probably right. I mean, look, there are downsides to all of these candidates. I suppose the other person is Zia Yusuf. Now, Zia Yusuf and Richard Tice have famously engaged in some factional warfare, or at least their supporters have quite significantly, which has riven reform down the middle in the past sort of year or two. One of the many factional infighting that's going on in reform. Personally, I would much rather see Tice than Zia Yusuf. He's very talented, but he's not my cup of tea in terms of his overall policy picture. But I think that what we're illustrating really is that after Farage, there's a massive drop before you get even to the next contender, and we're not clear who the hell that is. Ultimately, I think that what Britain needs is a united party of the right to bring all the wings together to give us a chance against the left in the next election. But again, that seems more remote today than ever before.
I mean, that is a good point. Is this the point at which Kemi now sees an opportunity to do exactly what you're talking about and goes straight to whoever it is, right? I'm working on the assumption that he goes, okay? Now, I had Mike Graham on there arguing eloquently, in my view, wrongly, that he hasn't done anything wrong and everything will be fine. I just can't envisage that. When 5 million quid turns up in your bank account and there seems to be some difficulty in understanding what it's doing there and what the money was going to be used for. Honestly, any politician in the country, in the world, right, even in America, if $5 million turned up, that would be an issue. That would be an issue. So why don't she step forward and said, can we have a conversation?
Well, I think there's a fundamental problem with that. Although I would love to see the right united. I mean, I'm with you. I think that Farage is going to find it difficult to shake this off because the penny that he's desperately trying to stop dropping in the mind of the British public is that was 5 million quid from a crypto billionaire. Yeah. Money from George Cottrell, Post George, who also has crypto interests. And Farage has used a meeting with the Bank of England to argue against state involvement in crypto. And Reform has published a draft piece of legislation, the Crypto Assets and Digital Finance Bill, which says it will make the UK the world's premier hub for cryptocurrency. So that is the penny that sooner or later may drop in the minds of the British public. And that's what he doesn't want to happen, which is why he's creating all this noise. Now, in terms of Kemi and a potential deal with reform, that just makes things a whole lot more difficult, because you haven't seen any top flight reform politicians stepping away from this or saying, you know what, I'm going to keep my head down and not go into bat for Farage on this one. It just feels too wrong. I mean, even in Trump land, in America, you do see, for example, when he was signing that Iran surrender deal, you saw Marco Rubio keeping his mouth shut about it, not going into bat for that because he obviously didn't agree with it. You don't see that same playbook being followed by reform figures at the moment, and that makes it very difficult for Kemi to then say, okay, well, Farage is gone, let's embrace reform, because they've all allowed themselves to be tarred by the same brush, making it more remote, the idea of having some kind of coalition.
Yeah, very good point. Actually, brilliant to talk to you, Jake. I love your writings as well, and keep it up, keep punching out, man. We need people like you. Very good of you to speak to me today, Jake. Thank you very much. Cheers. So, I'm really in the same boat as Jake, which is despair, really. And it's very upsetting. So my point, and my point alone, is who on earth is going to speak for us if there's no Nigel? Because those other characters, pretty intelligent. I know Tice vaguely. I know Zia a little bit. They are bright guys, but the issue is they are not Nigel. Nigel, after all, has spent 35 years, as I keep on saying, wandering about in the desert. Nobody would talk to him, okay? And so when he goes, you know, après moi le déluge, as de Gaulle said, or he would have said it with a better French accent than me, I suspect. Okay, I'm going to the news. After the news, great guy coming on. Alistair Hilton gets involved over an issue over chairs outside a pub. Unbelievably, he ends up with the cops actually quizzing him and actually kind of threatening him, really, in truth, with everything going on in London, right? Whereas even Nigel said in his speech yesterday, you can't wear a watch or wear decent jewellery if you walk around London. They had enough time to grab hold of Alistair and give him a, quotes, talking to. Okay? We're not arresting you, they said. We're just putting you on the long finger. Really, honestly, I despair. I despair. Okay, after the news, Alistair Hilton.
Hi there, I'm Edward Hughes with your news. Nigel Farage dramatically quits Parliament amid a cheeky little donation scandal involving a fraudster mate, then immediately calls a by-election so he can heroically battle the establishment, which conveniently is now too scared to even show up and fight him. Classic Nige. Turning oops undeclared gifts into a revolutionary triumph. Meanwhile, Prince Harry's back in London for Invictus stuff, promptly loses his big privacy lawsuit against the Mail, shocker, and sparks a right royal kerfuffle over whether he can crash at Buckingham Palace. Meghan and the kids, staying wisely abroad while Dad dodges the drama. John Lewis is axing jobs. The economy's wobbly. But hey, at least the heat alerts are keeping us all hydrated with tears of laughter. God save the king, and whoever's next in this circus. Laters, tigers.
Yeah, hi there. So my guest now, honestly, is a fighter. Perhaps, Alistair, you tell how you got into this, and then we'll break and show the clip of the film, which is really quite shocking, really. So what was the problem? Where do you live? What was the issue?
This was in Chiswick. It was Strand on the Green, which is next to the river. Very nice bit of London. And basically, the local council, there's 3 pubs in a row along the river. The local council had said to them, you're on notice, you're not allowed your chairs and tables outside. They'd have them outside for the last 70 years in exactly the same place. Suddenly, enforcement officers, no, you can't do that. I tweeted.
What was the why?
I think there was some technicality they hadn't filled in, forms ZY, whatever. They hadn't done some technicality. So instead of just going, look, you just need to do that, job done, nobody have ever heard about it. For some reason, they got the enforcement officers who said, right, you've got to get rid of your chairs and tables. You can't use those until you've applied for the proper planning permission, etc., etc. Obviously, every day in the summer when you've got chairs and tables you can't use is big money, and pubs need money. Simple as that. So I tweeted about it and said, I think this is wrong. And it is wrong. It's wrong. It didn't need to be like that. So anyway, I tweeted about it. Councillor lives very close to one of the pubs. He didn't like me tweeting about that. And I was then in one of the pubs the next day after it's all sort of, had a big thing where people went, actually, Alistair, this is bonkers. You shouldn't, they shouldn't ban the tables. So anyway, I was in the pub the next day after it kicked off.
Okay, and this is where the clip comes in.
And this is where the clip
Okay, so he's in the pub, right? And then the following happens. He gets called out of the pub by 2 cops. And this is the film. Have you got it there?
Yeah, I presumed you were.
I was waiting for the conversation to get to that point. Ultimately, it's more of a just so you're aware as opposed to a insinuation or accusation. Are you aware that if you schedule a protest outside the councilman's house, it's an offence?
I haven't scheduled.
So are you aware of that then? Yes or no? If not, I'm happy to read out the legislation to you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Hold on. Whoa. I haven't scheduled any protests.
I'm not saying you have. I'm saying, are you aware that
All right, we know where this is going. All right, carry on.
Okay, lovely. Just so you're aware.
Yeah.
Section 162 of the Crime and Policing Act 2026.
Bear in mind, I was in the Bell and Crown, nowhere near his house.
What are you talking about? Today, you mean?
Now or anywhere.
Okay. This is just raising awareness.
Okay.
Okay. That's literally what it is.
We're using the fear tactics, but carry on.
Not at all.
Oh, we are.
Not at all.
Well, not we, you. Anyway, carry on.
Okay, feel free to decide. I'm just. Do you want to read out the legislation to you or no?
Okay, the reason I've cut short the clip is to understand the context of that conversation. So you're in the pub, two officers come in and say, would you mind stepping outside? So you step outside. What was their point about all this? So they objected to the fact that the councillor lived locally and he had objected to you naming him.
Yes, he had objected to sort of having the spotlight sort of shone on him, if you like.
What did you said about him? That
I had said that this councillor lives near to one of the pubs, and he was the one that had initiated this whole getting rid of the chairs and tables,
Is that
the
true,
whole enforcement. In my mind, that's true.
Yeah.
In his mind, that's not true.
Okay.
His response was, "Oh, I love pubs, and I would never."
So
have
how did this
anything.
happen then? If it wasn't from the council,
you tell me if it wasn't from him.
Okay.
I've spoken to other councillors, and they've said the same things as I'm saying,
Yeah,
but
fine.
he is saying the opposite thing. So I can't prove it, here and now.
Fine.
But if it didn't come from him,
so he then complained to the cops, did he?
So he's then literally called up the police, and again to a reporter for one of the big papers. He said, "No, I didn't call the police." Well, then to another TV channel, he goes, "Yes," or the TV channel said, "Yes, he did call the police." So you see, he says, "No, I didn't." Everybody else says, "Yes, you did." So he called the police. Right. They came round, literally a direct line, he's got, that they turn up.
This is incredible. A councillor complains about a tweet, right? And the local police force, who I imagine everything's not hunky-dory in the Chiswick area, I mean, it's probably as difficult as any other part of London, right? They think it's good use of their time to come down round and say what to you?
Exactly. 2 police come in, and it's a deliberate act. They're coming into a very, very busy pub. And if a policeman comes, or 2 policemen come in to not drag somebody out, but ask somebody to come out, then everybody's going to go, whoa, look at him, he's done something wrong. And then you stood outside with another 50 people or so going, He's done something wrong.
Correct.
And so it's very, very designed, this thing. They could have, this is a day later after my tweet had gone big regarding the tables, they could have texted me and gone, Alistair, we want a word. They could have emailed me.
Yeah.
They could have
said they could have invited you down to the station.
They could have gone, Alistair, we want a word with you. We want to explain the law to you.
Right. And the reason they didn't do that is because they were fearful then that you go and get a lawyer before you go down to meet at a set moment.
Well, two things, I think. A, I could get a lawyer.
Yeah.
B, it doesn't put this incredible sort of stress and pressure and bullying tactics on you.
Yeah.
Because by the police turning up, that is their way of going, you aren't going to do that again.
I buy that. So what is it they said to you? What was some bylaw or some law they quoted at you?
He's saying that he started off waffling away. At the beginning of that video, it shows it. And he started off waffling away about, do you know that you can't have a protest outside a councillor's house? And it's like, well, I wasn't having a protest outside a councillor's house.
When you said that to him, what did he say then?
I said that and he went, oh, well, I said, listen, there was no protest. I was not protesting outside a councillor's house. And then he sort of moves on and then it becomes something else. It's all on that video. And then it becomes something else. And to each bit, I'm like, listen, this is completely bonkers that we are having this conversation, two of us, outside a pub with everybody watching us, you know, and this didn't need to happen. But it has happened, and it's happened, in my opinion, because the councillor hasn't liked a spotlight sort of shone on what's gone on regarding the tables, and then the police want to make sure they shut me down.
But why on earth would they want to take up the councillor's cudgels? Not take it up on behalf of them. The police force are not an arm of the local council, for God's sake. They are simply they're there to catch criminals. It is beyond me to understand why they would do this. I particularly object to the idea that they couldn't have called you up and said, can we agree a time when you can come down and we've got to run things past you? In which case, you could have been forearmed, is forewarned, and therefore you needn't have been surrounded by people, made to feel guilty, pointed out to you. I see it's that bloke Alistair's at it again.
Exactly, but we see this. My opinion is this probably happens a lot more than we think it does. It just happened that I started videoing right at the start of this conversation with the police. Right. And I have, a fair number of people who follow me on Twitter.
How many follow you on Twitter?
90,000 something.
Yeah.
So, and there are people there that, work for papers, etc., and they've gone, hang on a second. So my guess is there's probably lots of other people who've got 20 followers and nobody ever sees this, or they don't video it. Because if I hadn't videoed it and I just said, guess what happened to me? People go, yeah, probably didn't.
Well, Mao Zedong said power comes out of the muzzle of a gun, but actually the truth about the matter is today power actually comes out of the video on your phone, doesn't it? Let's be honest.
Yes.
That if you hadn't had that, there would have been no way that anybody would have believed that this could have happened.
Exactly. It's purely, I thought, right, I'm going to video this because this is so bizarre. Literally sat having a drink with a guy and get, the police come. Because at that point, I had no idea what they were going to say, what it was about, not a clue.
Right, so here we are now. When did this happen? Last week?
Yeah.
Okay. A week later, what's happening to the chairs?
All of that sorted, and it was sorted pretty much immediately after the initial tweet, because I think what happened was suddenly everybody jumped on my initial tweet that was saying this is crazy, and they're all like, well, no, this isn't what's happening, no, all have tables, everything's fine. But at that time, the tables were stacked up, and I even did a photo, so the chairs of one pub were stacked up, nobody were able to use them.
Right, but how come that they did that volte fast? Did they do the volte fast on the basis of your original tweet?
I think it was partly on the original, on the basis of that, because when I'd done the tweet, at that time, all the tables were stacked up outside one of the pubs. So they weren't allowed, they obviously thought they weren't allowed to.
Which council is it, by the way?
It's Hounslow.
Right, okay.
So Chiswick, it's quite an interesting thing because Chiswick's very different from Hounslow, but it's run by Hounslow. So, at the time of my tweet, certainly one of the pubs had chairs stacked up and were not using them. By the next day, suddenly that's all changed. So I think the tweet did have an effect and a bearing on that. So, I was pleased about that. But I just don't think they like the light shone on them. I really think it's as simple as that.
So here we are. It's now a week later. The problem has now gone away. I feel aggravated on your behalf. I can't imagine how angry I would have got, which actually doesn't do you any good, by the way. So you guys, if you ever get involved in anything like this, anger is not helpful to the conversation. Stay calm, keep the video running, and you will win much more easily. Because remember, if you cross the line during one of the discussions with the cops, that gives them an opportunity to say, aye, right, you're Nick, son. And no matter what happens, you are then arrested, right? And that is what you should try very hard to avoid. That's true, isn't it?
100%.
Keep yourself,
100%.
if you possibly can, keep yourself calm.
And that's even harder when you've had a few drinks at a pub, not knowing you're about to have a chat with the police.
I mean, that is a very good point. I love that. I absolutely love that point. The police felt it appropriate when they knew that nobody was going to be arrested. They knew that there had been, actually, you hadn't crossed the line at all, as you pointed out. They still felt it appropriate to carry out something as big as this in public, to allow yourself to be the centre of really, you could have actually blown. I don't know you, right? Let me ask you this: are you somebody who's likely to blow up?
There's always the potential that I'm going to lose my temper, because I've had a few drinks. As people do.
Yeah. Well, that's what you're there for. You're in a pub.
That's what I want to do in a pub. Yeah. I want to have a few drinks in a pub, chatting with, some bloke in a pub. That's what I'm there for. I'm not thinking, well, I better prepare and stay sober in case somebody copper comes round.
Yeah, that is a very good point. No, that would be funny, wouldn't it? So all of you must go into a pub. When you go into a pub, don't have anything alcoholic. Coke Zero, right? Because at any moment, the old Bill are going to come around and start cross-questioning you about some obscure aspect of a local government law.
Yeah, and they had, and the other point in that video, my video, it shows it, they had already decided that hadn't broken the law. So this wasn't a case that they were coming along to investigate. They'd already been to the councillor's house, had a chat with him, looked at all the tweets, looked at everything, and it shows on my video, no, you come under the line of committing a crime. So again, they know there's no crime committed. They weren't investigating to decide whether a crime. They knew that a crime hadn't been committed, so why not text me? Why not email me? Why not ring me up and go, Alistair, come in?
Correct. So what were they looking for? They were looking for an assurance, actually it doesn't have to be given then, but for when you go home at night, talk about it to the family or whatever, to say, actually, I won't bother. We're going down that route again. Whereas actually, funnily enough, the route you did go down had exactly the right outcome as far as all the drinkers in Chiswick were concerned, and I suspect every single council taxpayer.
Yes.
So now we've got the councillor. So is the councillor due up for election at all?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. He's the Hounslow Council is Labour. He's a Green Party.
Oh, right. Okay, where are the Greens actually on pubs anyway? Are they A, in favour of them or B, against them?
He is definitely not in favour. Again, he will deny that, but he's not in favour of them.
Really? So whenever he's due to come up for election, we should try and get him on here. No, we should try and get him on here. Remember, get him on here and ask him all about this, because I personally, I love the pub. I'm not a drinker myself, but last night I was out, with somebody, and it was probably an incredibly enjoyable experience. And round my way in Weybridge, there's only about 3 pubs left.
Yeah.
So what's that? That's the Flintgate, the Queen's Head, and the Jolly Farmer, I think.
What were you in?
I was in the Queen's Head, actually.
Nice pub.
Yeah, nice pub, right? And if it gets left to some politicians, they'll do for drinkers what Labour are trying to do against gamblers. There is virtually no enjoyment being allowed left in our lives.
Well, I think a lot of politicians don't like pubs because traditionally that is where people can go and talk about the government and talk and they can't police it.
Good point.
You know, on Twitter
well, they can police it now. At Chiswick they can.
Now they can police pubs. So there we go.
Yeah.
They found a way of policing pubs.
Right now, you, Alistair, I don't know anything about you. I only know about this thing. But you do actually fight on behalf of things that you believe in on Twitter. So Twitter has been a decent voice for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, Twitter's been brilliant for me, you know, and I meet a lot of great people on Twitter, and you know, I've met some great people, and it's helped me, and I've got work off it, etc., etc. But really, most of my Twitter is me taking a picture or saying, look, this is what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, I don't even particularly have a comment, but I will have a comment on some things.
Yeah.
But then it's up to people to go, wow, hang on, that's not right, or oh, that's funny, or whatever. So some of my tweets are funny, some of them are very, very serious. But I think, you know, I think that's what Twitter is about. It makes people that, you know, like me, that don't work for a newspaper or a TV company or whatever, it lets us go, have you seen this?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, I do know even from my Sundays that all the scandals, every single one of the scandals, it never came from any of your employed journalists.
Yeah.
It always came in from a phone in, right? Somebody said, "Did you know X?"
Yeah.
Right. Honestly, those guys sitting on the news desk, they couldn't get enough of it. They answer the phone. You know, like in estate agents, there is a rush to answer the phone because they're on a percentage, actually, of any sale that eventually comes out. Well, the people sitting on the news desk are fantastic. Really? How incredible. I've been sent a question here by the production department of News UK. It's a massive and well-organised, hugely intellectual here. And it said here, did Alistair identify himself? He is legally obliged not to do so if he hasn't committed an offence.
Well, this is the very interesting question
By the way,
as well.
this comes from Pooch, of course, who is an absolute free speecher to the ends of the earth. That old line about free speech doesn't mean shouting fire in a crowded theatre. He would actually be burning the house down.
And I've been arrested too many times.
Burning down. Well, we've got a commercial venture between us coming up shortly at a theatre in Esher. And so if he starts burning that down, you know he's gone mad. But tell me about that.
Well, that was a very interesting
Is your
thing.
background at all in the law, or is it just something?
No, not at all.
Okay,
no,
fine.
not at all.
Good.
So that was interesting because I normally actually sit facing a pub. You know, I normally like to do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, on this occasion, I was speaking to a bloke. I had my back. They walked straight up to me in a packed pub, and said, "Are you Alistair?" So you think, well, hang on a minute. How do they know who I am?
Yeah.
Straight up to me. So afterwards, after I'd been out with the police, blah, 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 somebody then pointed out the councillor and his boyfriend were filming me, sat on the wall outside the pub.
What, the councillor who had made the original complaint knew that this was going to happen and actually was preparing? Now, I am not in favour of that.
I didn't know what he actually looked like. I'd only seen pictures, but I was talking. It was interesting because, funny enough, I had a couple of blokes had come out, literally of the houses when they knew us, and said, "Oh, I just want to shake your hand. I think you did a good job." Blah, blah, blah. Great. And then one of them went, "His boyfriend is videoing you behind you." And I'm like, "What?" You know, I didn't know who he was. And so I turn around and this bloke is videoing me. So the pub is here.
Why? And by the way,
police here, me here, them here.
Did you, I mean, after all, I have the image in my mind of Farage getting extremely irritated with Sky News. Right? But that is what journalism is about. Journalism is not about, you know, publishing how to make an apple pie, right? It is about actually being the sand in the oyster, to be honest. So you see that happening. I mean,
that made me really angry.
I totally get that. Did you calm your anger down though? Because I suppose you did, because the cops were there.
Well, the cops had then gone.
Oh, they had left.
They'd just gone.
Yeah. And then you spotted them.
And then I was chatting to these guys who I didn't know either.
Yeah,
They
but-
followed me
but
on
they
Twitter,
were-
blah,
they-
blah, blah. Anyway, they said, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then one literally went, his boyfriend's videoing you behind you. And so that's when I got angry. So the cops had gone at this point.
Did you then go and remonstrate?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. And what did the guy say to you in that?
He just had a big smirk on his face.
Seriously?
Oh yes.
Dear, oh dear. I
Oh,
would feel.
yes.
I wouldn't like to. I wouldn't like to be angry and see somebody smirking at me. I must say that was a really aggravated thing. Can I ask you something else?
happy.
You remember the bloke you were talking to? You weren't expecting this. You're sitting in a pub having a quiet beer with a chap who presumably you know.
Well, I'd only met this bloke then, and we were actually talking about some business stuff.
Yeah.
So he'd approached me about chatting about some business.
Yeah.
It's blooming embarrassing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, luckily he was very good about it and whatever.
What did he make of it all?
It was like, whoa.
Well, he must have wondered who the hell. He said, "Who am I trying to do business with here? I've only known him 2 minutes. He's already been bloody nicked by the old bill."
I know. It was quite luckily. This guy had followed me on Twitter, and he sort of knew, you know, and you know, very nice bloke, business guy, blah blah blah. So luckily, but lots of other people have gone, well, no, we're not doing that anymore. Do you know what I mean? So. Quite
So tell
incredible.
me,
But I think
I
that was
would
all
have
part of the plan. I think, not obviously to make an issue with somebody I'm chatting to, but part of the plan was to bully and make a big scene.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Obviously, part of the plan was not that I videoed it, tweeted it, and then all this happened.
Right, well, so Burnham is king of the north. Are you, Alistair, now going to be the Count of Chiswick? Or do you see what I mean?
Well,
I wonder whether...
I was thinking about being the next candidate for Clapton, but I thought, seeing as there's only Binface that's... sorry. Oh, sorry.
Right.
There we go. That's all right.
There we go. Yeah, so...
I like it. There we go. Sorry.
Yeah, very, very smart shirt, that, by the way, Alistair. I just wanted to say. So, yeah, what do you feel you might take on Binface rather than try and take on Nigel?
I think I know Nigel's one of your buddies, but I think, you know, there's an opening there. If it's between me and Binface, maybe I've got a chance.
Well, what if you were to give advice? Where do the police come out of? Do you know which is their station?
I don't know where those two
Okay,
came out
if you were going to give them the local commander advice, for instance, I would definitely write and to get a response to this, because I find that extremely worrying, right? That clearly you've pointed out something in relation to local politics, and you get a tap on the shoulder from the cops. I mean, I can't imagine how wrong that is and how aggravating it is. So you should write to, will you write to the Met or the local commander? I don't know. And also the leader. Where are the Greens in Hounslow? Are they the dominant party? Or?
No, Labour are the dominant party.
Okay.
I don't know the legal. I have had advice from getting advice on the sort of legalities of it all and seeing the best approach.
Do you know the best guy to go to? Go to Toby Young.
Funny you should say that.
At Free Speech Union, because first of all, they have a whole legal backup to them, so they can tell you X, Y, and Z. And the other thing is, I think you should keep it going. I think as I've got into this, right, all I know is basically what I've read your tweet actually. I thought it was one thing. It's a lot more sinister. I hate the idea of just having a quiet drink, totally disrupted. That could have been you might have been trying to do anything. You might have just trying to close a deal or something, or actually you were trying to open a deal.
It actually sort of was that situation. That's the funny thing. But we're having drinks, you know, we'd had a number of drinks, and it was a business chat, but it was a social sort of thing as well. But it was the first time we'd both met, you know, we'd spoken, but the first time. But as I say, you know, it wasn't by accident that they caused this issue. It was by, you know, design. And my guess is it happens a lot. It's just you don't hear about it.
So take that point. So I'm not quite sure how the police force, how the structure works, but a police inspector or perhaps a police superintendent in this case, is probably dealing with this morning, noon and night. If you take your view that this was not a one-off, this was part of a general policy. What on earth are the police doing getting involved in this kind of stuff when there are, if you asked a police officer, he said there is no end to crime in London, right? It's become more sophisticated. It's become, the other side are cleverer than we are in some respects. And yet they still find time for that. And that officer, those officers, they must feel humiliated by your response, sitting there videoing them, and then them saying, this is not an arrestable offence, you haven't crossed the line, we felt we need to talk to you.
I think if you watch that video again, by the end, I think the officer had thought, oh, this was a rubbish idea. In his face, I think you could tell,
right?
You know, and then at the very end, he says, well, I thought we could shake hands about this. And the last words on the video would be going, no chance. You know, you just think, quite incredible. To come and do this and think we're going to be best buddies afterwards is...
totally ridiculous.
Is ridiculous.
Totally preposterous. Right. Alistair, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.
That was a fascinating discussion, very worrying as far as I'm concerned. If there's anybody watching to whom something similar has happened, just get in touch with the channel. You can get us on YouTube. Alistair, congratulations on not losing your temper. Congratulations on actually doing something good for the neighbourhood and keeping those chairs rare. There is no downside to what you do, and I don't know who the Green Party councillor is. He will know who he is. Perhaps he'd like to come on and explain why he would brought along his special friend to take the video of something which had clearly been organised in conjunction with the local police force, which I find enormously disturbing, as though the police are an arm of the Green Party or of a local politician. I find that simply astonishing. Perhaps he'd like to come on, give his side. By the way, I'd be as courteous, I hope, as I've been with Alistair. I'd just ask him, obviously the questions would be slightly more difficult than those with Alistair, but there's no point shouting and hollering, I'm not going to get the best of it. So the Green Party guy, if he'd like to come on and explain why he felt that this was something that was appropriate to actually bring the police into this. And perhaps the police would like to explain why they would turn up into a pub to a guy having a beer with a business colleague and ask him to come outside, and while he's being watched by 50 other drinkers along by the Thames, is cross-questioned and given basically a warning. I find that very, very disturbing. Anyway, thank you very much, Alistair. Thank you very much. And coming up, but now, look, the other big story apart from Farage, well, apart from Alistair, actually, I've really enjoyed that, Alistair. Really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
I bet they didn't know that they were coming across a calm, intelligent man. I thought they were just going to come across some half-witted gobshite, and that, of course, is another area. So don't lose your temper. If you ever get involved in something like this, stay calm. Stay calm. So the other big story currently going the rounds, so Nigel Farage going for a by-election, a bizarre idea, I think, actually, and it won't be the only by-election. We're going to face two of them, making a complete fool of Parliament, frankly, is the Prince Harry defeat. A fantastic defeat, by the way. Stuffed all 97 charges thrown out of phone hacking, blagging, or whatever it was called. They got it all wrong. Harry himself turned out to be a terrible, terrible witness as he got carried away with a kind of personal vendetta against the Mayor while in the witness box. Really, get real. You're not bright enough. Right, the only clever thing you've done is go and live in a big house on the west coast of America. And if you just go back there, I'd be very grateful. We're going to go to the news now. After the news, I think a guy called Josh Rom, who I didn't know. I thought if he had a romance, he'd be a rom-com. But anyway, Josh Rom is going to talk through the Prince Harry issues. I'm particularly interested in the Doreen Lawrence aspect of this. Anyway, after the news.
I'm Edward Hughes with your news. Nigel Farage dramatically quits Parliament amid a cheeky little donation scandal involving a fraudster mate, then immediately calls a by-election so he can heroically battle the establishment, which conveniently is now too scared to even show up and fight him. Classic Nige. Turning oops undeclared gifts into a revolutionary triumph. Meanwhile, Prince Harry's back in London for Invictus stuff, promptly loses his big privacy lawsuit against the Mail, shocker, and sparks a right royal kerfuffle over whether he can crash at Buckingham Palace. Meghan and the kids, staying wisely abroad while Dad dodges the drama. John Lewis is axing jobs. The economy's wobbly. But hey, at least the heat alerts are keeping us all hydrated with tears of laughter. God save the king, and whoever's next in this circus. Later's Tigers.
Yeah, hi there. Now, that was a very strange piece of video, and effectively it was a journalist who appears to work for Sky News knocking at the door of a house, which actually I think Nigel Farage, it's in his name, and I think potentially, I think it was his daughter answered the door. Farage has now kind of manufactured a kind of row saying that his family are being pursued and all the rest of it. Nigel, calm down. Calm down. It was a knock on the door and the house is in your name. The fact you're not living there, that may be another question, right? But the idea that you're being pursued on that basis is completely wrong and doesn't help your argument. And what I don't like is that you're creating these or conflating all these issues and trying to look like the little guy. Honestly, the little guy doesn't get 5 million just wash up in his bank account. Just get real. I'm a great fan of yours. You represent 25% of the nation. We're all absolutely beside ourselves, not knowing who's going to speak for us if you disappear. Please, just don't try and extend it into some war with the press, right? Their job is to expose things like 5 million quid turning up in your bank account. You're a politician. If it turned up in my bank account, nobody'd care less. Actually, that's not true. Mrs. MacKenzie might care less, but nobody else would. But when you're in politics, it's different. Okay, well, let's talk now to somebody who I suspect won't have a too dissimilar view of the Farage and the press issue. It's Sam Dowler. He's a journalist and political commentator. Hello, Sam. Good morning. So, morning, matey. How do you find? I feel uncomfortable about this, to be honest. I can't understand why Farage thinks it's in his interest to try and turn into a big story, a journalist knocking on the door at a house that he owns, expecting, not unreasonably, that he might be in it. But what's your view?
Well, this is the thing. I've worked in journalism for many years, and while I've never worked for a red top or anything like that, door stopping is just a normal journalistic practice.
Correct.
And and that and the way he spun it, it's like, you've attacked my daughter, kind of thing, and and obviously this house is part of his portfolio, a portfolio of 5 houses, and the problem is none of this is adding up. The £5 million that he. I mean, if he would just answer the question and not fly off the handle and say, "Oh, I could buy Ferraris with it. Oh, it's none of your business." people just want some simple answers, and then turning it all, like you say, in your preamble, like turning it all into this whole victimhood complex. I mean, the double standards, I think, is crazy, because the way that everyone in Reform and everyone in Conservative Party went for Angela Rayner, and even went for Keir Starmer, and it was like relentless, and the press, like front page every single day practically. So I don't understand how when the money involved here is dwarfs anything that Rayner and Starmer were dealing with. He just won't simply answer the question. So this latest theatre, which is all I can think it is, or a distraction, because this parliamentary investigation will carry on after this by-election, which is obviously bound to win, and as you were saying before, which could lead us to another by-election. So I mean, it's like the people of Clacton aren't there to basically butter him up and to say, oh no, we love it, and also like they don't, these are people who some of them live in very poor areas. They don't want this political theatre, and he might have shot himself in the foot as well, because if his only competition is Count Binface. I don't know if you remember the Boaty McBoatface. I mean, if that's the only other person, and everybody else in Clacton who doesn't vote for Reform decides to vote for Count Binface, he might lose it, and that would just be classic. That would be classic British humour, wouldn't it?
That would be a great moment. But these are serious moments, because my serious problem is that he does represent 25% of our country. It's been consistent, that 25% as well. In fact, it's been higher. It's been up to 30%. But 25% is a huge number. Who is going to be our Farage if there is no Farage? And that when people think that he's not going to get, that Reform are not going to win, their numbers are going to go right down. So that to me, Sam, is my issue about all this. This is a worrying moment for, I think, for democracy.
I agree, and the thing is, it's like with Restore, you've got the leaders of both parties clearly despise each other, and it comes at the expense of the voter. So then you have obviously people who, and I just think it just shows such lack of respect for Reform voters to just think that no one cares about the 5 million. To think that saying, yes, I got a lottery win, like a lottery win, like 99% of people that vote for him got a 5 million lottery win, it would change their lives completely. So it's not no big deal. And then obviously, some of the shady company that he's kept, etc. It's like he can answer these questions, and by throwing a tantrum and doing all this, he just makes it look like he is guilty of something. Like there is something to hide. And I agree with you. And if you lose Nigel as a voice, then you haven't got a great deal left. You've got a party, people like Robert Jenrick and like Suella Braverman, who were Tories 5 minutes ago. Like they have a real opportunity here to make a difference, and it's just almost become farcical. So I agree with you.
So I mean, one of the issues is that Farage can't hold a press conference on this issue. Can he? Let's be honest. Because,
exactly.
And therefore, that's why I regrettably think he will stand down and he will lie low for a couple of years, make a huge amount of money, good, right, and then come back again and will be welcomed back like the Messiah. To be honest, I could see him going back up to 25%, and I would urge him to do it. I think to sit there and simply soak it up, getting enormously bad-tempered. I happen to know that he is off the dial, beyond, and this is most unusual. He's not like this. I've known him for donkey's years. He is actually a very engaging, energetic guy. He's an 18-hour-a-day guy, can drink all of us under the table. Excellent for him, but he is not like he is. And on that basis, I'm afraid that the best thing that could happen is stand down now, spend 18 months quietly. After all, you spent years quietly before, and then come back. Okay, Josh, well, thank you very much indeed. It's not Josh, is it? It's Sam, isn't it? Anyway, Anyway, Sam, very good to speak to you. I hope to have you back again.
You're
Thank you very
welcome.
much
Take
indeed.
care.
Okay, so as I said before the break, the issue, the other big story that's around is honestly, I so enjoyed Harry being stuffed. But not only Harry being stuffed, actually, I was more irritated, actually, by Doreen Lawrence. So Doreen Lawrence is the mother of Stephen Lawrence, who was murdered by some racist thugs out in Eltham, in South London. The Daily Mail threw their weight behind the Lawrence family. The reason for that the Lawrence family really came onto the radar was because the father of Stephen Lawrence was a painter and decorator who had worked in Paul Dacre's house. He was the editor of the Daily Mail. Heard the story, and he threw the editor threw the mail behind the Lawrence family. And it went on for years. So at every turn, they supported Doreen Lawrence and her then husband. And what happens? Along comes Harry, goes and sees her and says, there is some suggestion that your information that they've published had been garnered in some illegal manner. There was no justification for this, by the way. And I have no idea why Doreen Lawrence then abandoned this friendship because of Harry and co. Say, Harry and a solicitor, actually. Harry had said, trust us, right? So she gives up on the Mail, who stood by her for literally decades, and instead goes to court. Presumably, I don't know this to be true, that she wanted damages for her privacy being invaded. After all, instead of that, the whole thing blows up. The costs are off the scale, right? At the very minimum, Harry will pay $5 million, and he could pay a lot more. So here we have Doreen Lawrence, okay? What happens to Doreen Lawrence? After all, she's in for millions. Now, was there a secret deal done? Did one of the others, a rich person there, supposing an Elton John type character who hates the press, by the way, hates the press, hates me actually, hates me. I was at a wedding where he was there like that. Honestly, looks good kill. Fantastic. I don't care much for Elton John, not that matters. I hated in his book and in his film, he basically attacked his mother and his father. Who do you know? When you're as rich and you're as successful as him, why bother? Why not? All families have problems. Anyway, there's millions in legal bills. And Doreen Lawrence, she ditches the Mail and she loses. Why did she do that? I'd like to come on and explain that, actually. There's some suggestion that somebody else picks up the tab. I don't know if that's true or not. I suspect it might be true, since I doubt whether she's got Fulton's that low. Her share of this might have been £4 million. Incredible. Anyway, somebody to chat my way through it is Josh Rom. He's a broadcaster, journalist, and a royal commenter. Hi there, Josh.
Hiya, Kelvin. Good to see you again. It's been a long time since our previous life at Love Sport.
Oh, that was good, wasn't it? Love Sport. Well, let's hope this lasts a bit longer than Love Sport. That bloody cost. By the way, that cost me millions. That cost me more than Harry's going to have to pay in legal bills. Right, Josh, tell me, what's going to happen now? I mean, would people like Liz Hurley have to pay millions as well? I mean, where's all this money going to come from? There's some suggestion that Elton John may have bankrolled Doreen Lawrence. I don't know whether that's true. But, I mean, Harry can't be bankrolled. So that's a huge amount of money. I'm so pleased he got stuffed, because you can't imagine what that was like. If he had won that case, he would have been on the steps of the court, wouldn't he? Giving it large. Why did they think they didn't have the goods? And when he was in the witness box, it became clear he didn't have the goods.
Yeah, it's funny, because with all of them, it wasn't just a little bit. I think they thought I think what their approach is they'll throw as much as the wall and see what sticks, because they had over 90 instances that they claimed contained unlawful information gathering. There was over 50 counts. So I think they probably thought, if there was just one that we could prove, just one, just like in the Mirror case, just like with MGM, if there was just one, they'll be in for a winner. But Judge Nicklin, the ruling was absolutely unanimous, complete and utter victory, I think, not just for the Mail, but for the British press. And I've spoken to a number of journalists that have been involved in the case. You know, my very good friend Nicole Lampert was one of those accused, and it wasn't just, you know, royals here. It was, of course, mainly showbiz: Elton John, Liz Hurley, David Furnish. And effectively, these were not just the livelihoods, but the entire reputation, decades-long career of journalists here were on the line. And the ruling was absolutely unanimous. And you could see in the judgment as well what the judge says. Every single journalist was called either impressive, credible, and very much believable. So on that case, it's interesting. And it's very interesting what you say about Doreen Lawrence, because this is the thing. And actually, from what Paul Dacre said since then, has been actually, you can tell he took Doreen Lawrence especially very personally, because this was a man that put his entire livelihood on the line by naming those killers before the trial on the front page of that newspaper. He was not just putting his job on the line. He could have been in prison for contempt of court. He could have lost his entire livelihood. This could have had long-lasting impacts for his family. This was a 15-year campaign by the Mail to get justice for the Lawrence family. And you could tell that actually during the case as well, he took that very personally. He said it was bitterly wounding. Those were his words during the trial. So I think Doreen Lawrence as well, and he even said, my heart bleeds for Doreen. This was something that the Mail really took on as one of their real kind of almost like a humanitarian campaign to get that justice, that well-deserved justice for the Lawrence family. But that's the thing. I think they take a rather more dim view when it comes to Prince Harry and the other celebrities.
So you're Prince Harry, right? You've come over here.
Not my Prince.
Yeah. You come over here and your dad, you fall out with your dad, okay? The guy's got cancer. Give me a break. Why would you want to fall out with your dad, right? So your dad's got cancer. You got nowhere to live, right? You're a homeless twerp. You then drop anywhere between £5 and £15 million in legal bills, okay? Which I suspect, as somebody has just tweeted there, Meghan will have to sell a lot of jam to fund that lot, right? Why doesn't he refuses to go to camera. He refuses to give a press conference, both of which he would have done, actually, if he'd won, right? You can't imagine. And the demands for Leveson 2, Leveson 22, Leveson 2022 be something like that. Why doesn't he just bugger off back to Montecito, or however you pronounce it, to the west coast of America, and leave us alone? He doesn't like this country. He's clearly not well in himself. I was quite taken by what Paul Dacre said, because he was quite generous towards him, wasn't he? Why be generous? That'd been me. I'd have poured the biggest bucket in history on him. Why doesn't he do that? Why didn't he? Supposing that had been you, right? You'd just been put through a torture of years of research and money, and you triumphed. This guy here, who was actually determined to destroy you, wouldn't you have given him a good old boom? No?
Yes and also no, because of course the Mail is under different leadership now, but this is still a company that actually put the entire weight of their company behind their journalists. We're not talking recent stories here, we're talking decades old stories ranging from the 90s to the early noughties. So this is a company that has shown Paul Dacre a lot of goodwill and was willing to stand by him. And Paul Dacre as well has been very gracious in victory, so to speak. Yeah. But I will say his words towards Prince Prince Harry, as he said, there's not a laundry in the world big enough to wash the dirty linen that Prince Harry aired about his own family in Spare. So he's still making a huge point about the alleged hypocrisy of surrounding Prince Harry as well. And actually, I think the Mail just want to obviously keep calm, carry on. They've still got papers to sell. They've got a website to run. I do still freelance for them a bit. So it's keep calm, carry on. But I think it's more of a case of let Harry kind of hang himself, so to speak, in terms of he's the one who showed himself up to be an utter hypocrite, seeking huge damages for invasion of privacy, and then losing on this huge level. It's utterly humiliating for Prince Harry. And he's also suffered that humiliation in court as well. And especially, I'm sure you've read the summary judgment. I was there in the courtroom as Harry was giving evidence. The judge had to step in 3 times to remind Harry, and it was also written down in the summary judgment as well, that actually it's up to the lawyers to argue the case, and Harry was just there to provide evidence. And you could tell in Harry's testimony that he was on this crusade in court, that he was determined to put these points forward in that way, and the judge stepped in. But it was also very clear that Harry was his testimony was confused, he was angry, but he also didn't at times understand the particulars of the case as well. Like, there was one time, I think it was either about Tara Palmer Tompkinson or Natalie Pinkham, when he said that she could never have been and has never been a source, to which the Mail said, the lawyers for the Mail said, well, this article has a direct quote from her, so actually she is the definition of a source in this instance. So that's the thing. He showed himself up, and then at the end, when he kind of he had to hold back tears, he broke down in tears, saying, "Oh, they've made my wife's life an utter misery." Well, Meghan Markle had absolutely nothing to do with this case whatsoever. So the whole thing is during his own testimony, Harry was caught out several times. I think he just didn't. He also said as well that he became distrusting of his circle, but yet his circle would never leak things. So those two facts don't add up as well. And I just don't think that he wanted to accept that, one, his inner circle were leaking things to journalists, and actually that journalists like Charlotte Griffiths, like Katie Nicholl, perfectly respectable journalists, as Katie Nicholl said, she did things the old-fashioned way. She curated content. She went out to party. Prince Harry even welcomed her into parties. He didn't want to admit that his own social circle were leaking things, and that actually he had a very good friendship with journalists, because of course that doesn't align with the narrative that he's painted in all of his documentaries and all of his interviews. And actually I will continue to point back to the Harry and Meghan documentary as well, because in that he talks about the Royal Rota, and how the Royal Rota is a system that they give access to all the newspapers. Well, in that documentary, he casually fails to mention the fact that BBC, ITV, CNN, and all the broadcast companies are also in the Royal Rota as well. And of course, broadcast companies that he has since given interviews to. So Prince Harry is careful to spin this narrative. And actually, what this court case does more than anything, it just blows the narrative up in his face.
Right, well, that's a very good point. Okay, one final point then, Josh, is this. Okay, he's now going to move back he's going to fly back to his family. When is this soap opera going to end? The problem is that they're both self-involved people, aren't they? He and his wife. It actually damages them now. It doesn't damage our country. It doesn't damage the royal family. We can all get on fine with our lives. We found that them going to the West Coast is probably the best thing that could ever happen. Why don't they just stay out there? What is this constant demand to actually cause trouble, even to a sick man like King Charles? What is his issue?
Well, this is the thing. I don't think he views it as an issue. He said very publicly several times that he wants a reconciliation. The lines that I've been getting out from speaking to my sources is that actually His Majesty the King also wants a reconciliation. His Majesty the King misses his son very much on a personal level. And now, since his cancer diagnosis, he knows that actually, as he himself has stated in speeches, he doesn't have long left on the planet, and that he wants to reconcile with his son. He wants to spend more time with his grandchildren. He hasn't seen his grandchildren since the Platinum Jubilee celebrations back in 2022. And from what I'm getting about Prince Harry is I don't think he wants to necessarily cause trouble. He does actually miss this country. And the thing is, him flying back, I think it's important to state that he's not flying back for this court case. He's flying back for Invictus Games, and he's also going to be doing other charitable endeavours. I know he's got a Well Child event coming up this week as well. He's going to Birmingham to mark the 1-year countdown to the Invictus Games in 2027, which, of course, helping military veterans is an absolutely admirable cause there. So actually, I've got, from that side of things, I'm not going to criticise him. And also, I know people might disagree with me, but with Meghan, all she wants to do is kind of make it in Hollywood, and all she wants to do is really sell jam. She's not the one actually causing the problems here. The main person causing the problems, the main person taking the state to court for security isn't Meghan Markle, it's Prince Harry. And actually, I think there has been a lot of people that are just willing to hate on Meghan for absolutely anything she does. Now, of course, she has caused damage to the royal family previously. I will absolutely concede that. But I think now, from what I'm getting from speaking to sources, is that actually she just wants to make it in Hollywood. She just wants to sell jam. She just wants to make a living. And unfortunately, she may or may not have the ideas to go with that. And that's another subject entirely. But actually, I see the person who's making all this trouble is Prince Harry. And, this trip was meant to be a kind of sort of reconciliation trip. And also, I also still think that a meeting might happen behind closed doors, because if you look at the headlines closely, and from I've been speaking to sources as well, that they've emphasized it just won't happen in London. Now, that's the thing, in London. Now, I don't think it's going to happen in Birmingham, but there's no reason to suggest that actually it might still happen behind closed doors, that Prince Harry, Meghan and the kids might meet the king, maybe in Windsor Castle. His Majesty's not going to alter his itinerary, but they could go to Windsor Castle. They do come under security there, under the Windsor Park estate. So it might still happen behind closed doors, and we might only know about this afterwards. It's not out the question.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. That's very interesting, by the way. And do I wish it to happen between the father and son? I think with Dad not being very well, then the answer must be yes, actually, because you never know, when the last meeting might have been. But Josh, thank you very much for the insight. I'm much taken with you. Good to see you. And let's hope UK Live turns out to be a bit better than Love Sport, that's for sure. Certainly.
I'm sure it will, Kelvin.
It was not very good for my wallet, I do know that. Okay, so we'll go for the news, and then I'm hoping that the Leo Kirsch going to come on. Now, he is a funny guy. He's got a couple of things running against him. One, he's Scottish, and two, he's about 7'3". So if he wasn't funny, it would be a very dull life. Okay, after the news.
Hi there, I'm Edward Hughes with your news. Nigel Farage dramatically quits Parliament amid a cheeky little donation scandal involving a fraudster mate, then immediately calls a by-election so he can heroically battle the establishment, which conveniently is now too scared to even show up and fight him. Classic Nige. Turning oops undeclared gifts into a revolutionary triumph. Meanwhile, Prince Harry's back in London for Invictus stuff, promptly loses his big privacy lawsuit against the Mail, shocker, and sparks a right royal kerfuffle over whether he can crash at Buckingham Palace. Meghan and the kids, staying wisely abroad while Dad dodges the drama. John Lewis is axing jobs. The economy's wobbly. But hey, at least the heat alerts are keeping us all hydrated with tears of laughter. God save the king, and whoever's next in this circus. Laters, tigers.
Right. Yeah, hi there. Well, fortunately, now that.
Amen.
Now, amen. That's crossed the line. That is about a gag I told. I'm not going to go into it right now, but
Should we play it for Leo?
what for Leo?
Yeah.
Oh, what? Play the whole gag?
Yeah,
Well,
let's
let me introduce Leo first of all, and then we'll play the gag. Hey, Leo. We've got Leo Kirsch coming up. He's a stand-up comedian, generally funny guy, and good to see you, Leo. In fact, the last time I saw you was on Sunday, wasn't it? And you had your daughter. Was it your daughter with you?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well,
yeah,
it
she
would be
was
helpful
she was
if
at the
the mic
party
was
with
on.
me. Can
I
you
can't
hear
hear
me?
you.
Muted himself.
Oh, you
muted.
joking? Am I still? It should all be on this. What the? There's still nothing.
Well,
What's?
I mean, one of
what's
the
not going on?
issues. It looks as though he's in a decent studio there.
Yeah, why is there no? There's
I
no
wonder
cut.
what's
It's all
going on
working
there.
this side.
But if I remember rightly, this is what happened before, wasn't it?
Well, last time
Isn't
it was
there
something
anybody
else.
who can operate them?
But this is
You'll probably see a line through something.
No, there's
if there's a line through something, if you press
but
it should.
but it's showing.
should be
It's
all right.
showing on the thing. It's not me. It's the thing.
Can you hear me?
It's the thing. Yeah, I can hear
Oh,
you.
you can hear me. Well, why
I
don't
can
we
hear you.
conduct the conversation like that? We do it through fingers, okay? So tell me, did you enjoy the party on Sunday? Right. Okay. Did you meet anybody interesting there? Now, I like this. This is the best way. We're going to carry out all interviews like this. How many people did you think were complete prats at that party?
Right, Kelvin, we're going to go to the news.
We're going to go to
a
the...
little reset because everyone can hear, so I'm going to do a quick reset.
Okay, we're going to do a quick reset.
We'll be back.
We'll be back. Okay.
Hi there, I'm Edward Hughes with your news. Nigel Farage dramatically quits Parliament amid a cheeky little donation scandal involving a fraudster mate, then immediately calls a by-election so he can heroically battle the Assange, turning oops undeclared gifts into a revolutionary triumph. Meanwhile, Prince Harry's back in London for Invictus stuff, promptly loses his big privacy lawsuit against the Mail, shocker, and sparks a right royal kerfuffle over whether he can crash at Buckingham Palace. Meghan and the kids, staying wisely abroad while Dad dodges the drama. John Lewis is axing jobs. The economy's wobbly. But hey, at least the heat alerts are keeping us all hydrated with tears. And whoever's next in this circus.
Yeah, hi. We're hopeful that we've corrected the gremlins in the Leo Kirsch broadcast arena. Leo, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Hey! This is the best way to conduct it. Leo, there were a load of politicians that do on Sunday, but wasn't there was Nigel Farage. What do you make of everything that's going on right now?
I mean, it's a bit of a circus, and I think the way, like when Farage came out and said he's going to stand down and trigger a by-election, for the other parties to not stand against him, everybody's saying, "Oh, this is so smart of the other parties. They're going to show up Farage." No, it just shows up the other parties. If any of the other parties thought they were going to beat him, there's no way they'd be standing down.
Correct.
They'd be running their candidate, and they'd be, but they know they don't have a chance of winning. So it's not some magnificent, exposure of Farage or exposure of his sort of alleged attempts at creating a circus. It's just an absolute sign of establishment weakness. I wonder if they're going to do it at the general election. Oh, we're not going to run this general election because Reform are going to win. It's stupid. It makes a mockery of democracy. And also for people to be saying, "Oh, this is going to cost the taxpayer so much money." It's like, what, 250 grand? Like our welfare bill is 333 billion pounds a year. This is a drop in the ocean. Also, Reform have said that they're gonna cover it. They're willing to cover it. I don't know if that's actually even feasible, like legally feasible. But where were these calls? Where was this parsimonious concern when somebody stood down to trigger a by-election so that Andy Burnham could run? I don't remember all these people saying, "Oh, this is a terrible waste of taxpayers' money." No, then triggering a by-election was a fantastic thing to do, apparently.
I tell you what, let me raise one other point with you. Did you read about the Bridget Phillipson, the education minister, is now saying that anybody on benefits, right, can now claim the 30-hour allowance to go to take up the nurseries. You're unemployed, right? No, you're unemployed, and now you're going to be able to go down to your local nursery, right, which is already crammed to the rafters anyway. I don't know, round my way it certainly is, right? And actually you can put your kid, even although you're not going to work, right? You're not going to work. You're going to be able to put your kids in at our expense in order for them to actually apparently meet other children. That's ridiculous. The whole point is you're at home all day. You would have thought you'd be a better mother and father than if you're going to go and put your kids at our expense into a nursery. The whole thing, Leo, these people have gone absolutely mad with our money. I wouldn't mind if we were hugely wealthy. We're skint. In fact, we're so skint that they've just discovered that all this Burnham Manchesterism stuff is actually skinterism. That actually they have dropped 7% in spending power between 21 and 23 compared to 4.7% around the rest of the country. The whole country is skint, and now we're sticking the unemployed kids into nurseries. The whole point about going to nurseries is that you're going to work. And if you're going to work, somebody's got to look after the kids. But if you're not going to work, you don't have to go and put your kids in the nursery. It's simple. It's my money. I don't want to give it to the unemployed to have somebody else look after their blinking children. Sorry, that is a version of Downfall, which is now available shortly as a video. Sorry about that. Anyway, Leo, so there were loads of politicians that do. I ended up talking to Michael Portillo, who told me, you know, he wears all that striped, those red trousers and the striped jacket. He gets a $2,000 allowance from his from the production company, so that he's always walking around wearing that kind of stuff. What about your own outfit? You're looking very smart, by the way. What's going on? Are you going on to a gig?
Yeah, do I get $2,000 from your production company to get me down to TK Maxx, get another one of these jackets? Yeah, no, I'm self-funded. I'll sometimes go over the £50 mark if I see a nice blazer in TK Maxx, but that is it.
Do you shop in TK Maxx?
I do shop in TK Maxx. It's a great shop. I don't know why people sneer at it. I've got my t-shirts come from Primark and my jackets come from TK Maxx. You know, maybe if I make it, maybe if I end up on benefits, I'll be able to afford somewhere better. I'll be down at Gucci with all the hours in the day that I won't need to work or need to raise my children because they'll be in nursery.
Well, that is a very good point. You've got it was a daughter, wasn't it? I saw you with. I can't remember.
Yeah.
How old is she? Didn't look very old.
She's 3.
Right, but actually, do you put your kid into nursery? You're certainly entitled to.
Yeah, she's in nursery right now, and I mean we pay for it, and it's not cheap. Like, nursery is expensive. I don't know how I'm surviving, to be honest. Like, when I was single, I used to live off about 50 quid a week, and now, every morning I've got to suddenly magic up about 700 quid to pay for nursery and pay for everything else that you need to have when you're actually a real human being with a family. So yeah, I mean, the government's really got to watch, because the incentive to work is dwindling. If you work, if you build up any wealth, they're going to come after it. Unless you find a way to get it out of the country and leave, they're going to come after you. And if you sit in your bumhole doing nothing, watching daytime TV, playing Candy Crush, you get lavished with all the benefits in the world. And the nursery fee thing is bonkers. As you say, nurseries are there to look after the kids when you're at work, and also when you're working. Sometimes it's a struggle. You're frantically trying to end meetings and get back to pick up your kid from nursery.
That is true.
So if I've got the option of not working, getting all my rent paid, getting money to eat, getting everything I could possibly want, getting my mobile phone, getting my I can get a car with PIP or whatever. They had like Audis and BMWs available in Motability. There's all these different benefits, and if people know how to play the system, they can make a good living. And people, because of the internet, everybody's sharing the tips on how to claim all these benefits. So there's hardly any incentive to like leave benefits and then go into a job, which, you know, when you start out working, you're not getting paid a huge salary. And also there's, you know, you don't know if the job's going to fall through at some point, and then you're going to have to like reapply for all those benefits you were getting. There's no incentive to work here. And politicians always say, well, we need mass immigration because British people don't want to work. I bet they'd want to work if they didn't get everything lavished on them for free. And also, how come people who come here get off the boat, they still got wet trousers, they can go down to the benefits office and claim all this stuff? Like, if you're coming in as the dependent, like we bring a care worker in on 35 grand a year to wipe a few bums or whatever, and then he can bring his entire extended family, the entire village can come here and claim welfare and get healthcare and all the rest of it.
I like that idea. Look, Leo, what I'd like to do, I know you're probably far too busy, is literally have a 5-minute Leo spot in every show that I do. You come on, you have I don't have to ask you a question. I just say, hi, Leo, and then you go, boom, right? And you give us a good boom. And then at the end of it all, I feel so charged up. I've clearly gone mad just getting your energy. So I love having you on, Leo. Come on as often as you like. You don't have to be on the schedule. Just shout out from, I think it's from Marlow Way, I think. Just shout out, Leo's here! Right, at which point, under our rather sophisticated production scheme, which you have been a victim of, right, well, come on. So it's lovely to see you, Leo. I hope to see you certainly later this week, but also forever. You are the best. See you later. Cheers, Leo.
Cheers, Kelvin.
Cheers. Right, sorry about that. I got a bit carried away there, but it does seem ridiculous that the unemployed are now going to be given the free 30 hours down at the nursery because I just can't understand. Surely the joy is if you're at home, you can sit there and give your children proper education. You can read to them. You can do this. You can do that. You can do the other. The reason that people go down the nursery is because they're going to work. The whole point about unemployed is you're not going to work. And yet now it's all... Anyway, I can't go on because if I carry on like this, as somebody rightly pointed out in one of the texts, the defibrillators here are not working in the same way as the glitch there. Right, now, coming on right now, most importantly, we got... I don't know whether you've been following the story at all. Some research has shown that when the Cameroonians came over here, there were 12 of them, they bought, for every one person who had a visa, on a health and care worker visa, they bought 15 of their relatives. The Ghanaians, it was one, and then bought 8 relatives, right? I think there were 2,500 Indians and 10,000 relatives came in. Honestly, there's supposed to be laws now which could, well, actually restrictions which stop all this happening. These are huge numbers. These were last year's numbers. I've got on the line right now Alf Mehmet, who's Alf, who I've known for years. He's chairman of Migration Watch. He's done a very good job. Actually, currently relaxing, as you can see, that he hasn't bothered to dress up for the big event. Clearly, the tie got lost in the post. Alf, good to see you. I wanted to explain.
Leo didn't have one either, come to think of it, and he wasn't even on holiday. I'm sitting here in 35 degrees, mate, 2,000 miles away.
Actually, you're in North Cyprus, aren't you?
I am indeed, yes.
What's it like? What is North Cyprus like? I've been to the south, which is very European, and the roads seem very nice, and they've all seemed to be paid for by the EU or something. I'm told that the north of it is much more like the kind of the Middle East, much more Turkish. Is that true?
It's becoming more like Turkey, certainly. But look, I was born here, and when people say from in the south or the north, and I say, well, I was born before north and south were invented here. And in fact, my little village is still there where I was born. Has been razed to the ground, unfortunately, but there we are. It's very pretty. I think it's still, to a certain extent, less developed.
Yep.
than the south, but it is quickly catching up, really. And we won't go into the politics of it,
Okay.
but for all sorts of reasons, it's an isolated part of the Mediterranean for many reasons. And I think that in itself has, over 50 years, has had a considerable impact in the way that the North has developed. But it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Okay.
And despite what people say, you can come and go pretty much freely between North and South now. And it's cheaper here. It's about all I can say.
Yeah, that's good news. Right. So you agreed to come on out to talk about this latest piece of research showing that when people come here on health and care worker visas, we were assured that, and it was the Tories that got this phenomenally wrong, we were assured that they wouldn't bring literally half the village with them when they got one of these visas. And yet now I've seen some research, I saw it in the Times actually, it's led the Times, there was 15 for 1, Ghanaians were 8 to 1, I think Indians were 4 to 1, I think the Pakistanis were 5 to 1. There were literally tens of thousands of relatives coming in. Why don't we just do what they do in the Middle East, which you get a visa and you come in. If you want the job, you can have it. Otherwise, if you want to bring your family with you, you can't come in. Why do we entertain this? And who is supposed to be looking after the shop for us? Who is supposed to be fighting for us?
Well, can I start, Kelvin, first by saying you referred to our being skint earlier.
Yeah.
At the moment, as things are, just with looking at the migration and the impact of low skill, low pay, no pay migration, all I can say is we're going to get a lot skinter. That's without a doubt. We took in something like 4.1, 4.2 million people under Boris, the infamous Boris wave, and that most of those people are still here. Of those, something like 1.1 million only came into work. All the others, the state is looking after them, whether we like it or not. If people come here and they're admitted, they're settled, they're given indefinite leave to remain, and even before they're given indefinite leave to remain, those who've come in as asylum seekers, for example, all of them, the state looks after. It costs billions, and the Cameroonians and the Ghanaians are a drop in the ocean. We've got so many millions more who potentially could come here and be looked after by the state.
Well,
it's crazy.
Even now, Al, are you saying that there is a fresh wave on its way? And how is this being conducted? I mean, I don't understand. I thought we peaked under Boris. We're not gonna have another 4 million come in, surely.
Well, not in the same time frame, but ultimately, yeah, we're still pretty open. One of the things that the points-based system that Boris introduced did, which I would like to see toughened back to what it used to be, and that was the sort of the ceilings and the qualifications that were necessary in order to come here, either to work or to come here to study, but ultimately come here long term. That needs to be toughened up considerably. Shabana Mahmood made an attempt and suggested that she was going to do this. And what happened? All hell broke loose on her backbenches. They started saying things like, you can't do this, it's un-British. That's total nonsense. No one who comes here to work or study has the right to bring in their family as well. That is something that we could, at a stroke, we could pass secondary legislation that says no one who comes here to work can bring their dependents. We can do that. if it's really highly qualified people, professors of this, super clever engineers who are going to actually benefit our economy, our society, yeah, I think there are grounds there for saying, okay, you can bring your family, but they're not going to bring dozens of dependents. They just don't. What we're talking about are those who are coming here to do the low-level jobs, the sort of, and I do think that care worker work is pretty low level. It is unskilled work. It's work that can be picked up as you go along. And it's a nonsense that those sort of people, A, should be given a free hand to come here, or the employers should be given a free hand to bring them here. And secondly, I think it's absurd, and I do hope that it really does stop, that they bring in their dependents as well. That is a nonsense.
Okay, I mean, I've seen the nation change radically, I think, over the last 15 to 20 years. Do you see a reduction in migration in the country? Or do you say, actually, I'm afraid it will carry on like this and it's likely to accelerate under Labour? Or actually not dip under Labour, put it that way around?
It has come down for all sorts of reasons, a lot of them to do with belated measures that the Tories introduced before they were voted out. But we've still got 171,000 net. Just imagine. So 171,000 in 2025, more people than actually left the country. So that in itself is massive anyway. But then when you dig a little deeper, the non-EU net migration is actually something like 350,000. And they are the sort of people who are coming here to join family, coming here to study and staying on, coming here to do low skill work and staying on and bringing their family. That I see increasing, frankly. And one of the reasons why I believe that's going to happen is twofold. Firstly, employers have pretty much had a free hand, really, to bring in who they want and as many as they want. In the days when I was an immigration officer 50 years ago working in Nigeria, if someone wanted to come here to work, ultimately the Home Office, me and the guys of the Home Office in Lagos would say, yes, you qualify, you can go, and give them the visa. What happens now is that, as happened with the care workers, you ask agents to recruit for you in the countries where this sort of skill or this sort of worker is available. I mean, that is madness. To actually give a free hand to them.
Okay, we've got to go because it's coming up to midday. Look, thank you very much for breaking your holiday to talk to us. We will talk to you again when you are actually back here, where actually the temperature is even hotter than North Cyprus. That's not quite true, but it's within a couple of degrees. It's a nightmare. Thank you very much for sparing your time on your holiday.
Can I wish you good luck with your new venture? It's great to see it.
Okay, that's very kind of you to say so. Thank you. Right, so that's it, everybody. But I'm going to hand over now to Paul Cox, who's doing. He is actually taken over because Mark is clearly exhausted by his 2-day week, and has handed over to Paul with a bit of World Cuppery. Now, I was out on business last night, or what is commonly known as going down the pub, and I didn't see clearly one of the games of the day. I saw the 2-0 of Egypt. I then thought, oh, well, that's that, right? Including a fantastic second goal. The next thing I see is they won 3-2. Are they really going to win a second World Cup running?
Well, I mean, I hope not, Kelvin. I'm not the biggest RG fan, but it was an absolute World Cup
classic. If you looked at the scoreline, you think, well, of course, a fait accompli. Argentina had gone through 3-2. But what it doesn't tell you is that Argentina went 2-0 down. Messi missed a penalty. Zico scored a goal that was disallowed. It could have been 3-0. But then from 78 minutes on, it became the game of Argentina's World Cup and one of the classics of this World Cup so far. They came storming back, Messi scoring an equaliser, and then in the 97th minute, Kelvin, Argentina scored the winner to take them through to play the winners of the other game of the night, which was played later on in the day. And that was Switzerland versus Morocco. Sorry, no. All of a sudden nearly forgot. That was a much tighter 0-0 game, but it went to penalties and Switzerland won 3-2. They go forward to play Argentina in the quarterfinals, Kelvin.
Okay, man. All right. Well, it sounds like fascinating stuff. What are you going to talk about? Cricket? There's nothing. Isn't today a rest day for everybody?
It is a rest day today, Kelvin. But we are going to talk about.
Well, where's Littlewood then? Where's that?
Well, listen, I'll tell you exactly where Littlewood is right now, right this minute. He is boarding his first-class cabin to fly back to the United Kingdom. He is actually able to set up his podcast studio on the plane. Very kindly, Mike Graham has paid in the order of £50,000 for this to take place, Kelvin, because this show is incredibly important, and Mike did not want that to go amiss.
Okay.
So this second now, he
can I
is
just tell you
on the plane.
That Mike Graham hasn't got 50p in his pocket and about 50 grand. I wouldn't worry. That's where I know that story is a complete whopper. Anyway, Paul, I look forward to Paul Cox is coming back with his World Cuppery. And thank you very much indeed, Paul. And that's my lot for the day. I'll see you tomorrow when we will have... there's a guy on there who keeps wanting me to tell the Kay Burley gag, right? And what I might start doing is telling the Kay Burley gag every day so it becomes a part of UK Live before we're shut down under the 1984 Blowjob Act. Anyway, thank you very much indeed. See you tomorrow. Bye. I don't know whether I can tell this joke. Kay Burley told me this joke, right? So what? By the way, this is likely to clear. If we had a license, this will be the end of this. The end of this station. So what's the similarity between lobster thermidor and a blowjob? And the answer is you don't get either of them at home. Okay, so
Who told you that?
I'm not going around to Kay Burley's house again then.
So you won't be getting lobster thermidor around there, that's for sure. And anyway, I can remember that joke from bloody that joke must be 35 years ago. Right? Yeah. I think if you get told a great gag, give me from this thing. Thanks very much. Well, I don't know. I don't think it would.
Well, we're back for another amazing edition of World Cuppa. Technology today, absolutely extraordinary. My thanks to the airline I'm on. They've managed to set up the studio in the air while I'm flying back from Palma, Mallorca to Gatwick Airport. Absolutely incredible. It's cost me an arm and a leg on this first-class cabin. Absolutely amazing what you can do with technology these days. My apologies if the Wi-Fi fades out. They are using all of the bandwidth to keep me live as this flight goes on. Thanks very much for Paul, because just as I was boarding the plane, I wanted him to talk you through last night's results. But we're going to use today, especially as I'm 30,000 feet up and can see out of the window the globe around me, we're going to use it as a bit of a retrospective to talk through the highs and lows of the tournaments, some things you might have missed. So this is a very special edition of the World Cuppa. Before my wingmen join me, let me make sure that the air stewardess knows that I'm in need of a bit of refreshment. They're quite good on this airline.
Ladies and gentlemen, turbulence is imminent.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Please fasten your seatbelts. Those in first class, Mr. Mark Littlewood may continue drinking.
Nice little glass of bubbly. So let's bring in my wingmen. Paul Cox in the box. How the very devil are you doing, sir? And Glindex, Glyn Brailsford. How are you both on terra firma? Cheers to both of you and all of the viewers from this great first-class cabin. Paul, thanks for taking us through last night's games. We're now down to the final 8 of the tournament, but I wanted to take the opportunity to talk through with my wingmen bombing with me down the right wing the kind of highs and the lows of the tournament so far. There have been more highs than lows, I think, but we've thought of a couple each to go through. And Glindex, I wonder if I can start with you. What's been the tournament high to date?
Okay, I'm going to be a bit jingoistic about this. It could have been England's best performance in 60 years. It could have been Jude Bellingham's individual brilliance. It could have been Harry Kane's brilliant second goal against DR Congo. But for me, it's the England fans. They paid through the nose to be there. I love the whole Wonderwall bit, or Wunderwall, as Thomas Tuchel probably calls it. And it's not just the fact that they're there and they've spent the hard-earned. It's also the fact that they're not from fancy-dan football clubs like Chelsea or Manchester United. Instead, there are flags for Mexborough from South Yorkshire, my part of the world. There's Redditch, Wigan, all sorts of unfashionable areas. But people have gone there. They embrace the national team like no other, and it does make my heart swell with pride to see them after the game.
Yeah, I always love looking at those St George's flags, and it's very noticeable, isn't it? That it's all the smaller teams, really. I think I've seen Macclesfield, I've seen Altrincham, I've seen Tottenham Hotspur. It's all of the small clubs who seem to follow England around. And I agree with you, Glenn. They've been a credit to the game. We're going to start on the highs, then go to the lows. We're starting on the highs because I'm 30,000 feet up. By the time we get to the lows, we might be moving a bit closer to terra firma. Paul, what's been your big high of the tournament?
For me, the standout moment of this World Cup has been Cape Verde, or Cabo Verde as they're better known. Without this 48-team system, which my jury was very much out on prior to the World Cup, we were very unlikely to have seen teams like Cape Verde. And of course, they put on some incredible performances, worthy of heroes, considering that most of them will go back to their day jobs as bakers, carpenters, and male prostitutes. After the World Cup, we got to see a tremendous... And we cannot talk about Cape Verde without their 40-year-old cataract-ridden goalkeeper, Vazina, who was incredible against Spain and also later incredible against Argentina. This was the true spirit of the World Cup, the underdogs. These boys came home to Cape Verde to a hero's welcome, and as they should very much have done. I think Cape Verde have resembled everything that's good about the World Cup, and we will always remember this World Cup for those performances, I think, Mark.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they do go, they've still got the unbeaten record, really. Absolutely spectacular. Shows it really is. Yeah, you're right. It's after 90 minutes. Yeah, they only lost to the Argies in extra time. So nobody in World Cup history has beaten Cape Verde. Bit worried there, Cox. You seem to slip into a bit of Spanish or foreign lingo. Capo Verde, you suggest, as they're better known. Which other broadcast
the
we're looking for? The bloody BBC or something?
Well, I did my training at the BBC. Of course, I hosted a couple of news programs on the BBC back in the early 50s. People are unaware of that. That's why it's not well known. But yes, I did, and I must apologise. Once you go woke, once you've done all the training, once you've done the anti-bias, cognitive bias training, it's difficult to get it out. You're programmed, so you start, talking about as it's better known as, and you start trolloping out a load of old nonsense. I apologise for that profusely. Thank you for not getting the yellow card out there.
Yeah, that was a very, very near yellow card. But, I think you've been Article 27, given your fulsome apology. I'm just going to try and... There's a little bit of turbulence here, but I'm just going to try and get... there's lots of other busy people. I'm in a first-class cabin. You would have thought that... Oh, yeah, here you go. Yeah, right. Thank you kindly. Yeah, the nuts have arrived. Could I have a top-up on the champagne as well? Actually, the top-up on the champers would be good. Got to hold this pretty firm, guys. Sorry, it's not easy to be broadcasting at altitude, but I always find drinking a lot of the champagne is the best way to deal with altitude sickness. So I've got my nuts, got my champagne. Let me give you my high, gentlemen. And this is a bit of a nerdy one, and I think it's a bit of a controversial one, so I'm a bit worried that you're not going to agree with me. My high of the tournament is, fingers crossed so far, it shows technology can work in football. I have been a VAR skeptic from day one watching English football. I think it's wrecked the Premier League in terms of live attendance, mainly because of the delays. But the Americans have pulled this off. Not perfectly. I'm not going to say absolutely everything has gone to plan, but it's been fast. It's been reliable. There's been very little time has been chewed up going through, well, did VAR get this right or wrong? They've more or less got 100% record. The only controversial ones are ones that you can't call if you've rewatched it 1,000 times. Well, a judgment needs to be made, right? Like the sending off of Balogun against Bosnia. So I think it's been basically flawless. It's been quick. I always love the ways that if you do things like a chip in a ball or goal line technology, it's instantaneous. I like the fact that the referees are explaining the decision to the spectators. If we can do tech like the Yanks, I say bring it on, not just for the Premier League, for the EFL and for the Beezer Home League's Division 9. Coxie, what do you say of that? Can you actually afford a video camera at Fratton Park for Portsmouth FC?
We can't. We certainly couldn't afford to maintain it. We could probably crowdfund one from Tandy. I'd imagine that's probably where we'd have to buy it from. I'm sure that still exists somewhere. Look, I agree with you all the way up until you said about the lower leagues. I think the lower leagues needs to remain pure. One of the advantages of watching football in the lower leagues, like I've been forced to do, let's face it, since at least 2011, is that it feels genuine and authentic. You go away to Big Barry United and you get the real experience. You smell the pies, sometimes the urine of the away fans, and as a result you feel like you've really experienced football. This isn't, the Emirates Stadium where you're sat on padded seats and you actually don't need to watch the game because, it's given to you via an intravenous drip and someone tells you what happened 30 seconds after it happened. Who cares what's going on the pitch? Get me more beer. I'm not in for that. I'm up for the real thing. So I do agree on something, however, and that is that this has worked tremendously well at this tournament. There have been two iffy refereeing games, maybe more, but for me two. One I'll talk about now, which was Mexico and England, and the other one I will talk about in my not so favourable moment of the World Cup. I shall keep that powder dry, so carry on watching. But VAR itself has been very efficient, happened very quickly, and has proven that yes, it can work. And for me, it's no surprise that it's worked well in the US. They're an incredibly lazy nation. Of course, they rely on technology. They have done for years. It gives them more time to eat hot dogs and crisps. And that's why it's worked so well there, Mark.
So you like the beer? There's a bit of, sorry, I'm suffering there's some turbulence here on the craft.
I hope you're okay.
I think you said that you want the beer, Paul. But I mean, in this first class cabin, I am going for another glass of the bubble.
Third glass, Mark.
Third glass. Look, if you're paying these sort of rates for first class cabins, you got to stick with it. Paul? What was your concern about VAR in the Mexican England game? I thought they got everything right.
No, not VAR. Well, I just thought the refereeing decisions within the Mexico-England game I thought was a little dodgy. Now, VAR actually got the sending off correct. In real time, most of us thought it was a very brave tackle, a great tackle, if you will. But, with the VAR replay, you could see that by the modern day game, it was considered a dangerous play. Foot over the ball. Had he made contact properly with the Mexican's leg, that leg could have been paella or whatever they eat in Mexico. And I could see that was true. But, the penalty, Well, come on. I mean, yes, he didn't make contact with the ball. It wasn't a dangerous tackle. I think the referee saw that in real time. He could have stuck to that decision. He didn't. And what he did feel was under tremendous pressure from that crowd to give Mexico something. Otherwise, he was likely to lose his life.
Yeah, I still say that tech helps there. You can't get that human element out of the game. Glyn, what about you? I mean, you're a Rotherham fan. Don't like rubbing it in, but rough season, going to be difficult for you in League Two. I guess Rotherham don't want to install goal line technology, 19 different cameras, some AI system to work out offsides. But has your mind been changed on the way that the Americans have shown us that technology can be pretty brilliantly used for our beloved sport?
Yes, but at Rotherham we don't need it because there's no threat of us even getting the ball across the bloody goal line. But I'm with you. I think it's worked to treat. Some questionable refereeing. I'll tell you what, I think VAR did miss in the England-Mexico game, and that was we could have been down to 9 men because Nico O'Reilly did elbow their player who then ran off to tell teacher. But Tuchel got him off sharpish, and we avoided a sending off there. It was pathetic, it was petty on the Mexican player's part. But if they'd have gone to VAR, they were gone. His elbow was raised, hit him in the nose or teeth, whatever it was, and we'd have been down to 9 men, and it might be a different story now.
Yeah, so those are our highs, ladies and gentlemen. Tell us in the chat below and what you think the highs of the tournaments have been. I've gone for the tech. Cox in the box has gone for Cape Verde, and the Glindex has gone for the England fans, who have been absolutely bloody remarkable. Let's go for the lows. Just because we're onto the lows doesn't mean I'm not going to be ordering another glass of champagne. I think I've got the air stewardess on it already. The turbulence has quietened down. Cox in the box. What's been your low of the tournament? Overall, a great tournament so far, but tell me your downside.
Yeah, look, I just want to echo that while I've got a few moments to myself to talk here. It was a great tournament. It still is a great tournament. It's not over. We're talking, to you before it's even done. So let's not get too carried away. But there was one moment of absolute S-housery that I think shouldn't go unmentioned, and that was in the France-Paraguay match. Unbelievably, no Paraguay player seemed to get any ticking off from that referee whatsoever. Elbows off the ball, all sorts of chirping in the ear, really trying to put them off. At first, because it was France, and I am genetically disposed to dislike the French, I was all for it. But the more the game went on, the more I thought, no, this is not cricket. In fact, it's football, and this is not how we play this game. I don't think that they had any chance of creating opportunity or winning, so they just went for the S-housery. I did not like that. That belongs in the past. That is something of the 80s and 70s. It's not for the modern day football. It's a much more technical game now. And they were capable. Yeah, they should have been out there playing the football. If you take out the S-housery, it gives you all sorts more time to try and beat the French, who in that first half weren't playing as brilliantly as they could do. And they were frustrating them. So the S-housery of the Paraguayans, for me, was probably the lowest point of this World Cup, and what's been a tremendous World Cup.
Yeah, fair play. Paraguay, pretty nasty sods. I'm just hang on. I'm just going to try and get myself.
I think you've got a problem, Mark, and that problem is too much first-class champagne.
Look at this. They've got the hot towels coming now as well.
Oh my
hot
goodness.
Towels coming. Champagne is cutting through. Yeah, fair enough on Paraguay, but I will always love them for knocking out the Germans on penalties, right? That was pretty good.
That's true.
Glyn, your low light.
Yeah, well, just going back to, I agree with Paul on that one, and Mail had it online. Their headline was France 1, Dark Arts 0, which I think...
Okay, so your low light, we got Paul's.
Yeah, mine is Trump's intervention. I bleated about this on the programme before, but I can't get over it. Even though Balogun's sending off was harsh, I'm just disgusted with the way FIFA responded to Trump's call. We keep calling him Sycophantino. I can't stand the man. What I do admire is the 48-game tournament, but I can't forgive them for this intervention. It was just despicable. Yep. It threatens the whole integrity of the game. Can't get over it.
Yeah, we all owe a great debt of thanks to Belgium for knocking out the United States of America. I didn't think those words would pass my lips, but ever. I'm a big fan of the USA, but I am glad that happened. Here's my low light, gents. See what you think of this. Despite it being an amazing tournament, with what you might say have been some very surprising results, the highlight of Coxey there was Cape Verde. I wanted to see a big upset in the early rounds. And for me, an upset isn't Cape Verde 0, Spain 0, right? It's not Uruguay 2, Cape Verde 2. It's not Curacao nicking a point. It's one of the big teams losing to one of the small teams. That didn't happen, and I really wanted to see an opening round fixture, possibly a round 2 fixture with a big upset. And now we're deep in the competition. No match could really be an upset. There'll be overdogs, there'll be underdogs, but I just wish, Cape Verde had nicked a goal against the Spanish, actually beaten them for sake of argument, right? So we didn't quite get that win for the underdogs, even though some of the underdogs have performed heroically. I think that would have just added a bit more, and it's a shame we didn't get that. What do you think of that, Paul?
Yeah, that's true. That is true. There wasn't that one where, it's unbelievable. The closest I came to it, of course, was probably Cape Verde, Spain. We saw Brazil getting knocked out by Norway, but that's not a big shock. Norway are a good team with one of the world's best strikers. Unfortunately, they're going to go out in the quarterfinals, but fair play to them. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. It would have been nice to have seen that. Would have been nice to have seen Cape Verde beat Spain 1-0 or, something of that ilk, or maybe Canada to beat somebody in the quarterfinals. One thing I'm glad that didn't happen was, obviously not last night, but the night before, Belgium did go through against the US. That would have been an upset. That would have been a big upset, and that would have been an upset that had probably ruined association football for some time.
Yeah, true enough. That's not an upset that I would have wanted. Glenn, need to know your response to the low. There's a bloody disaster on the aeroplane at the moment, right? I've just drunk them out of champagne, and I'm going to basically want my money back. This has cost nearly 40 grand to get this bloody cabin and studio set up for a 2-hour flight, but they've still got some white wine. So I'm now moving on to the white wine because I've drunk them out of champagne. Glindex, what's your take on my low light? Wouldn't it have just added that little bit more if we'd managed to actually see one of the minnows slay one of the giants? We'd actually seen David not draw with Goliath, but to take him down with a slingshot.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because the Cape Verde stuff, Cape Verde, by the way, I think it means Green Cape, which sounds like a film superhero, a Marvel superhero, doesn't it? And Vizina was certainly a superhero in the tournament. But I think when you look back, because the actual win wasn't there, this will just get lost in the mist of time. So big shame, but nonetheless, them and Curacao did give us something to make the tournament really worthwhile. I'm just not sure it'll last in our memory for the next 4 years. But it would have been great to see a minnow win, of course.
Guys, thanks for your highs and lows. Always good to hear them at what is presently extraordinarily high altitude, but the Wi-Fi is actually bearing up. Miracle of bloody miracles. I will be back with you soon once I've finished at least another 2 bottles of white wine. Firstly, I had a really good chat. I want a really good chat with Canadian football expert Peter Shared. He's managed to join me while I'm way up in space. We're all the way in Canada. See what you think of what football's impact is in Canada these days. Then I'll be back with my wingmen to chew over what this means for club football in the future. Well, I'm delighted from 30,000 feet up in my first-class cabin that the Wi-Fi here is good enough that I've been able to connect all the way over to Canada to be joined by football fanatic, Aston Villa fan, Canadian football expert, former announcer of play-by-play for the Vancouver Whitecaps, Peter Shadd. How the devil are you, Peter? Great to have you on the show.
I'm delighted to join you, Mark. Please have a glass of champagne and a salmon canapé on my behalf.
Oh, well, I've drunk them out of champagne pretty much, but I'm waiting for the air stewardess to bring me a little bit more. I'm hitting the call bell, but you know what it's like. There's a lot of demand. out here. I do think they should give first-class priority there. Look, talk me through it, Peter. I'm fascinated. We've been, here we go. They've managed to get me some refreshment, you'll be glad to know. Talk me through this from a Canadian perspective. We've been delighted to speak to some Americans during this tournament because one of my, frankly, imperialist ambitions is to spread association football into every single corner of the world. And I kind of think we've kind of half broken the North American market, but not fully broken the North American market. Tell me what association football is like in Canada, and has this tournament helped supercharge it?
Well, you know, that's the biggest question. Even before this tournament was announced for Canada, what would the legacy be for us? You know, would it be more infrastructure? Would our domestic league be beefed up? Would there be a complete change in the governance system? Because our governance system is all over the shop. The challenge of being a massive country with 4 different time zones is that it's difficult to coordinate. Our country is literally run by elected volunteers, okay? And that's a problem for us. So that was all my question. Infrastructure-wise, in Vancouver, we are left after this event with 2 turf fields, one at Killarney High School, one at UBC near where the Whitecaps train. That's not a lot. So the emotional support of this team was incredible. We saw at every stadium sellouts. We saw parties at every single fan fest in almost every single corner of this country. There were people engaging with this event. My concern is that the backdraft now creates a scenario where the World Cup will just be this beautiful, distant dream. And that will be a massive opportunity missed.
So what you're hoping for, and I think I'm right in saying that this has sort of sometimes happened in South America, possibly to the detriment of club football, is, right, you might have this complete wave in favour of Canada as the national team, that, you know, if Canada are playing, you know, a huge fixture, not just obviously in the World Cup, but they've done themselves credit over this tournament, I would say. They've played pretty well, probably, you know, got maybe a slightly higher outcome than they expected, eventually lost to a very good team. But you're trying to make sure this feeds down to actually having a healthy league system, right? In South America, there's always the worry that people follow Brazil, but the club structure doesn't really have the same support. What's the club structure presently like in Canada? And is your concern, therefore, that great, if Canada are playing the USA in Toronto or Vancouver, you'll get tens of thousands of people turning out for a once-in-a-year event, but week on week, you're going to struggle to convert that into support for Canadian league teams? Is that the worry?
I think you've characterized it pretty well there. We have 3 Major League Soccer teams who are all struggling mightily because of the exchange rate with the American dollar, and a lot of the business is done in American dollars. The Vancouver Whitecaps, where the venue at which the World Cup games have been taking place, are one of the best teams in Major League Soccer, and yet there has been a relocation danger pretty much for a year now when the owners announced their intention to sell. Imagine if one of the legacies of the World Cup is that in the stadium where the professional team is housed, it moves to Las Vegas. That is an absolutely dire possibility, and hopefully that gets back on the rails, but again, the business is not very supportive of it. So we have Vancouver, we have Toronto, we have Montreal, and then we have the Canadian Premier League, which is sort of the next level down, a domestic league, all functioning in Canadian dollars with 8 teams. It is on various stages of life support. I mean, it's hemorrhaging money. It was founded in 2017, kicked off in 2019, and it's a beautiful little league. But again, this country is massive, and in order to fill the geographic gaps, you have to expand, and you have to be able to have more derbies. You have to be able to just build the business to entice sponsors to say, well, there's just more reach here. There's more engagement with more teams. So there's a couple of schools of thoughts. Save the Whitecaps, Toronto, and MLS, and Montreal as well, to be in that first North American tier, or move those 3 into the Canadian Premier League and beef it up and be a sovereign league, which is kind of what FIFA wants, because this Canadian situation with MLS was kind of grandfathered in at the early stages when MLS was looking for expansion and, more importantly, expansion fees. But now the drag with the business model, you know, that's a concern. So I'm not sure which way that's going to go. I could see the case for both. I mean, in Vancouver right now, our team is contesting. Last year we were in the MLS Cup final. We were in the CONCACAF Cup final. We've won the Canadian Championship 4 years in a row. We are in really good hands on the recruitment, development, and on the technical side. But behind the scenes, the team is losing something like 40 million or more per year, and that has to be made up somehow.
That is fascinating. So it's betwixt and between whether you benefit from piggybacking onto MLS, which is, hasn't yet been a massive breakthrough, but my God, is doing an awful lot better than the North American Soccer League of the 1970s, which proved to be completely unsustainable, or whether you go alone. Tell me, of sports fans in Canada, what competes for their affections? You've got ice hockey, I guess, at number one. But if you were to sort of tear it down or to look at a pie chart of what sports people were interested in, and I appreciate you can be polyamorous here, although I'm a football nut, I do follow other sports. They catch my eye. What's the breakdown? What sort of fans are you going for? Is it people that you're just going to accept ice hockey as their first love, but perhaps they've also got some time to follow the Vancouver Whitecaps? Or are you looking for a kind of monogamous relationship with people who've just discovered that soccer is the greatest game on the planet?
That's been my 40-year experience, what you've just explained there. I mean, this is a hockey country. There are 5 legitimate countries that could compete in a World Cup style event. This is what doesn't make sense to me. There is no star in hockey that comes anything close to an Erling Haaland, a Kylian Mbappe, Lionel Messi. Nobody comes even close to that. So it goes hockey first, close second probably. I mean, it's all the North American sports. It's a mix of football, basketball, baseball, I would say, in that kind of order. So there's more people watching the Premier League in Canada than there are watching the Canadian Premier League, our domestic league. And I don't think it's an issue of saying, well, we have to convert all those people. And they certainly jump on board when a team does well. But I think more importantly is that we cash in on the people that are here who are football fans, and they're from other countries. I mean, Canada has always been... My family came to Canada because of post-war immigration from Germany. And my entire neighborhood was Germans, English, Scots, Italians, and it was those people that drove the youth game and drove the engagement in the game. Well, those people still exist, and there's new people coming to Canada that are also more in line with football than they are with North American sports or hockey. So we just have to, this is a culture issue, Mark, and it's really hard to change culture in a country because it's been this way for 40 years. That's why this World Cup may have just given us a little spark to ignite a flame that we can blow on a little bit at the moment. But that's kind of the scenario. That's the landscape that we live in right now. The Canadian Premier League is not moving the meter, and it's not going to until either there's more expansion, there's a star player coming through, there's an improvement in the broadcast presentation, all those things, and the marketing, all of that. But it's still a tough slog in this country.
And I've mentioned MLS. What about the English Premier League? You can speak with authority on this. I've just sort of observed it. I wonder sometimes whether the English Premier League is a curse for those of us who have signed up to the key mission of spreading football across the world. On the one hand, I want to say it's kind of great if I'm in some utterly obscure corner of the world and I see somebody in a football shirt, particularly if it's not one of the big clubs, right? I mean, my heart leaps for joy if I see a Southampton shirt in Singapore or something like that. But the other part of me says, is that crowding out the potential of the emergence of domestic football? That if everybody in Canada who's into football is first and foremost a Manchester United fan or an Arsenal fan, would you see that as a kind of helpful, I don't know how to describe it, gateway drug into the overall game? Or does that just actually mean that they follow Canada and Man United or Chelsea or Arsenal and don't really take an interest in, say, the Vancouver Whitecaps? Which way does that play?
Do you know that it's such an extreme, that's two extremes right there. And the way I've experienced is it's one or the other. I mean, there are people that obviously do have their Premier League club. It's so easy to follow the Premier League right now. You have access. In fact, I think I have more access to the Premier League than some English people do. I can see every single game with one service. So I'm spoiled in that regard, and I'm spoiled by the intensity and the quality of that league. And unfortunately, that's the problem. It's the comparison with that. And you're saying, well, why would I consume this on Saturday mornings and love it, then take my kids to football and then go to watch MLS later when the standard drops off significantly, or the Premier League for that matter? And that's the Euro snob issue, or phenomenon, I guess you can call it. And I don't know how you bridge that gap, to be honest with you. I think it's about trying to make the local leagues better in standard. And I think this is one of the things that MLS has struggled with, is they've spent so much time on the glitz and the marketing side of their league. Because really, it's a limited partnership. It's literally a fast food restaurant chain with franchises in all these cities. The logos all kind of look the same. The teams are all kind of named the same. City name FC, you know. And what they haven't paid attention to is the technical part of it, the standard of play, the standard of refereeing. Are they increasing? Are they becoming better? Because there's a limitation to how much you could spend under the MLS's salary cap. Increase the MLS salary cap, you might lose a bunch of teams, including the Canadian ones, but possibly you increase the standard. And the model should be bring in the highest potential players from South and Central America, maybe even Europe, give them a great life and a great opportunity, and then sell them on, and let that be your business. They've never really figured that out. Well, the same thing could happen at the Canadian Premier League, but we're just dealing on such a smaller scale in that case. And there have been examples of players who have gone on to the Canadian men's national team from the CPL. Joel Waterman is an example. But that's where it has to beef up. I mean, we just don't have that same community connection to the sport as you do back home. And part of the reason, again, it comes down to geography. It's a monstrous country.
Yeah. Yeah, I think crossing Canada is something like the equivalent of driving from Porto in Portugal to Moscow and back or something.
Correct.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, for me, for tiny England, it's impossible to get my mind around it. Last questions for you, Peter. Thanks so much for your time and your insight. Firstly, how do you think the hosting of it's gone? It seems to me, other than Donald Trump's intervention, the hosting has been utterly magnificent. And who's your tip to win the overall competition? So the hosting first, and then how do you see the business end of this tournament playing out?
First of all, you know, FIFA does take a lot of pelters, okay? We know that, but I'm telling you, I have never seen, and I will never seen an event like this again in my life. This is the biggest event on the planet. And when you look behind the scenes on what's happening at the stadiums, and ours is just one of 16, the level of detail and support is astonishing. In Canada, it has been embraced. People are getting along in the streets. The streets tell the truth, Mark. And it has been a non-stop party. I'm going to be in severe withdrawal when this thing is over. I'm telling you right now. This was the last in Vancouver. It's over for here, and everything gets torn down right away. And that is so sad. So the hosting on all three fronts, to me, there's a case to be made that this tournament could be in North America every single time because it's so big and the creature comforts are so great. As far as who's going to win it all, I've learned never ever choose a team outside of the 8 nations that have won it before. I would find it fascinating to watch England win 60 years on. I really would. And you know, the game against Mexico was kind of one of those kinds of games that actually could boost you up into that regard. But when you watch France play, and even to a degree Argentina, you'd be really, really brave to choose one outside of those two.
Yeah, I sadly agree with you. But you know what? Anything can happen in 90 minutes. And I've got a few fewer than 90 minutes before this flight lands, if we can continue to make it through the turbulence and get back to Gatwick safely. Peter, fascinating to hear from you from North America. Thanks very much. We might try and check back in with you later in the tournament when it becomes a bit clearer who's going to make it. And I hope and pray this helps raise association football's profile and longevity in the great nation of Canada. Peter, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Mark. Happy landing.
So great stuff there from Peter. Thanks very much. Maybe football is a global revolution and it can get into every corner of the world. But joining me again are my wingmen. Glad to say both of the wings are holding up on my aeroplane at the moment, just about. They're less wobbly than my 2 wingmen, Paul Cox, the fox in the box, and Glyn Brailsford, the Glindex, considerably wobblier than the wings. I'm slurring my words. I'm through my 3rd bottle of white wine now. But look, we wanted to talk through the impact of kind of club football, the league structure, on the World Cup, because a perennial theme has been this, that we kind of know all the players, right? Okay, maybe not Vizino, because he was playing in the Portuguese 2nd division. But gone are the days when the first glimpse that you have at the Argentinian or Brazilian or Uruguayan team is when they take to the pitch in the World Cup, because they're littered around club football, which we watch endlessly on our TV screens. Glyn, you've got some pretty amazing stats that basically prove whoever ends up as champions of this tournament, kind of the Premier League are the winners. And perhaps you could talk us through, and we could put up image 1, I think it's the top 10 countries top 10 leagues thing. Yeah, keep that on the screen while Glyn talks us through where the players have come from and which leagues are represented in the World Cup. Glyn, what's in your Glindex about World Cup players by league?
Yeah, well, Mark, there are roughly 1,200 players at the tournament, right? But of those, as you can see from this graphic, 176 of them are from the Premier League. That dwarfs the Bundesliga of Germany in second place with 101. And it's not just that 176 players. We've got 37 players from the Championship in there, which tops the Eredivisie, the Dutch First Division Premiership, whatever they want to call it, this week. So it's massive representation. And it doesn't stop there. There's a handful of players from League One and League Two, including my own club. We had a player for Curaçao called Ayani Marta. He didn't even get on in the tournament, which speaks to his value, but I'll come to that in a moment. So you can see English clubs massively outweigh the other leagues. And then when it comes down to individual clubs, or I'll just go through the leagues a bit more as well. There's Serie A, we're dwarfing. Ligue 1, we're dwarfing. La Liga, we're dwarfing. So Saudi Pro League, I think, is quite impressive. 47 players represented, and MLS.
That's the Antiques Roadshow, though, isn't it, Glyn? That's
Yes.
the Antiques. That's all the players who are over the age of 35.
Yeah, I think that's the modern day equivalent of Fenerbahce or Galatasaray. That players go in there for a last good payday. I think. But let's talk about the individual teams as well, because who tops that league table? Well, Manchester City lead the way. They've got 17 players at the tournament. Imagine nearly two full teams in the World Cup, and that doesn't count, poor Phil Foden, who's left at home. I wonder how he feels like all his mates have left town and he's just there sucking his thumb. Same goes for Cole Palmer at Chelsea and Adam Wharton at Crystal Palace. But they're followed by Bayern Munich. They've got 18. But back with English clubs again, Arsenal have 16 players at the tournament. That's the same number as PSG. And then, not surprisingly, the clubs like Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, they're in the top 10. But we just mentioned the Saudi Pro League. Al Hilal, who tend to dominate there, they've got 12 players at the tournament. And here's one that I think will surprise you, Mark. Crystal Palace are in there. They've got 11 players at the tournament. That's more than Manchester United, it's more than Liverpool, it's more than Real Madrid. At the tournament. Right. It could have been more. Mark Gay only left them in the last transfer window, and Eze last summer, and was Elise last summer? I can't quite remember. But it's pretty impressive. It just shows the sort of strength in depth and the buying power of English clubs. Although it does strike me that we never seem to have the actual best player in the world in our league when he's at the peak of his form, but we perhaps come to that another day. Another strange fact, I just mentioned them once, but Real Madrid, Mark, going into the tournament, they had no players in the Spanish squad. Can you imagine that? No players.
Yeah, and we've got Bellingham in the England squad.
Yeah, they've got Bellingham, they've got Vinny Jr., they've got Mbappe, but no Spanish players. Although they have since signed poodle-haired Mark Cucurella from Chelsea, but he wasn't with them when the tournament kicked off. And it's not just sheer numbers, there's also a financial element to it. And I think you may have touched on this with Kieran Maguire last week, but the Premiership clubs, certainly City, are going to come out with the low millions, because it's basically a daily allowance for each player.
Yeah, but that's chump change, right? That's chump change.
Yeah, but it's not insignificant. Like for my boys, for a guy who just bench warmed for Curaçao, we got £120,000, which I think is actually more than he's worth, or it pays his wages for 2 seasons. So
bloody hell. There you go. No, I love that. And Braintree Town, of course.
Yes.
I think, get a nice little payday as well. Let me bring in Cox in the box. Look, I've got a question about this, right? Because, look, it's good to see the great health of English football. But let's be honest, Paul, despite how magnificent this tournament's been, we've been a bit critical that this has been an open borders World Cup, right? And I'm just wondering, what do you think of this? What would Cox's box say about this? I wonder whether to qualify to play for your nation's team, you should have to play in your nation's league. You should have to be English and play in the English divisions, Premier League, Championship, whatever else. I mean, that would certainly shake it up a bit, right? Rather than this kind of, the English Premier League's not English, for crying out loud. It's an international tournament. It's like us hosting Wimbledon and never winning it. What do you make of that league breakdown by numbers, Paul, and my highly strict rule to have more border force employed before you can select your squad for a World Cup?
Well, it's a very interesting question, Mark. Very much of the Stanley Matthews era, I would say. We probably haven't seen that sort of one league, one nation type football, at least one country type football since maybe the 70s, 80s. I remember the 90s, it seemed to explode after Italia 90, where Maradona had gone to Napoli and Paul Gascoigne had gone to Lazio, and we were all watching the Italian leagues on Channel 4 on a Sunday because it was very exciting. Div 1 looked sort of dull by comparison, and ever since then, of course, everybody's travelled everywhere. Now, I am not the multiculturalist, as you know, but this is a monoculture, and the culture is football. So, if it sticks to a monoculture and the culture is football, I see no issue with those players from all one culture moving between borders. It makes it very exciting. I would say, however, that if it was right now and we'd had everything, had the past been exactly the same as it has been up until this point, I can see England doing very well. And one of the reasons we do very well is our English players are playing in the Premier League, which has got players from all around the world, which has risen the standard. So I'm not convinced by that. I think I like it the way it is, as long as there is a monoculture and that culture is football, Mark. But what I will say just at this point is that, my goodness, we should rescind all the yellow cards from Glyn. What a performance on the statistics. That was incredible stuff. Incredible stuff, Glyn. What was most surprising to me is that we saw the Bundesliga in second. The Bundesliga in second. But that obviously is much thanks to England and Harry Kane. Harry Kane went over there. We decided to forget all about the world wars and the Nazis. We sent over our best striker. He scores 60 goals a season. And we've made the Bundesliga great again, Mark.
All right, I'm going to reach for another hot towel here, gents, because the champagne and the white wine's getting to me a bit at this altitude. And also, isn't it true, if you drink at altitude, you get drunk even faster? So apologies, guys, if I slur my words, but my two wingmen will carry me through because, it's getting a bit difficult to focus, frankly. But I wanted to put one more idea to you guys about this. Do you think that the 48th team at the World Cup should be a rest of the world team? So you look at all of the teams who have not qualified. That includes Italy, Pooch, obviously. And you can pick a maximum of one player from each nation. So it's not a backdoor way for Italy to get in when they're absolutely bloody awful in qualifying yet again. You can pick one guy from each nation that has not qualified, and you get, I don't know, Carlo Ancelotti to be the manager of the kind of refugees, asylum seeker, rest of the world team, the nomads who haven't really got any kind of place to go, and they play under, I don't know, the UN banner, or you could have them sponsored by Pepsi Cola or something, and you just have a rest of the world team, making sure, by the way, that great talents who play for small countries are going to be at the World Cup, right? If Norway don't qualify, you're taking Haaland, right? Back in the day, Wales don't qualify, you're taking Ryan Giggs. Way back in the day, Northern Ireland don't qualify, you're taking Georgie Best. Liberia have never qualified, you would have taken George Weah for 3 World Cups in a row. Glenn, what do you make of it? Rest of the world team, or am I going too multicultural at this point?
You, multicultural, Mark, I don't think that's a question. I think it's a great idea, but you're the mathematician here. How are you going to cope with 49 teams, or who are you going to eliminate to make way for the rest of the world?
Okay, let's say you knock out one European team, so you have 15 European teams instead of 16, or you look at Asia, who've underperformed in this tournament, so whichever continent underperforms, lose a slot in the next tournament.
The federations are going to be up in arms, aren't they? But it's a lovely idea in principle. Of course, everyone wants to see the best players on the best stage, and it's a tragedy, of course, that Best never played there and George Weah et al. But just going back on your point about English players for English teams, it would, of course, immediately mean that in this tournament we wouldn't have Bellingham, wouldn't have Kane, wouldn't have Gordon, wouldn't have Quansah. So that wouldn't be so good, would it?
Good news, in my first class cabin, they just said I've spent so much for it, I'm allowed to smoke. That's pretty damn good news at 30,000 feet up, isn't it? Yeah, but Glyn, you've made the classic the classic naive economist's error there, right? You've done static modelling. If you change the rules, people change their behaviour. So Bellingham and Kane would know that if they wanted to play for England, they got to apply their club trade in England, you see. So I think you'd have Kane at, let's say, Manchester City, or he would have stayed at Tottenham Hotspur. I forget whether Tottenham Hotspur are still in the Premier League. I think they are. And Jude Bellingham, when he left Birmingham City, goes on to, I don't know, Liverpool or something like that.
Yeah,
Cox, what do you think? Are you up for the Refugee Asylum Seekers United Nations UNESCO side as the 48th team?
Well, one of the reasons I wouldn't be is because it would encourage the type of conversation that we're trying to avoid, which is that the left would be all over this like a flannel around an old lady in the shower. They would be loving every minute of this. They'd be saying, oh, look, they'll all be supporting the rest of the world. And of course, if the rest of the world did really well because we put all the best players in there that weren't at the World Cup, we'd soon get fed up with it. We'd all want to be smashing the rest of the world 5-0. So I don't know. Leave it as it is. I don't like too much change. And as you say, the behaviours would change. Where in history do we change it? If we have to scrub out certain parts of history, then we have no idea what the statistics would tell us at this point, because the data would be null and void. So I don't know. Leave it as it is. And much the same with the rules and FIFA and Donald Trump. Leave it alone, boys. It might fall off.
And on that brilliant note of conservative monoculturalism, we go to the ultrasound Edward Hughes with today's news.
Hello, I'm Edward Hughes with your news for Wednesday, the 8th of July. I've got an announcement to make. I'm coming out of the closet. There you go, folks. I'm a Saints fan, loud and proud. And why, you may ask? Well, get a load of the following. In 1976, unfancied 2nd Division Saints pulled off one of the FA Cup's biggest shocks, beating favourites Manchester United 1-0 at Wembley, with a late Bobby Stokes winner, their first and only major trophy. The club has enjoyed dramatic rises, including back-to-back promotions from League One to the Premier League, 2010-12, and a Championship playoff final win in 2024 to return to the top flight. Legends like Matt Letizia lit up the Dell with sublime goals, while the side finished 2nd Division runners-up in 1984 and reached 2 more cup finals. From Southern League dominance in the early 1900s to resilient comebacks, Saints history is defined by giant killing spirit and underdog glory. Among fellow celebrity Saints fans are my old mate from the Dell days, Mark Littlewood, and fellow in-the-closet fan, Paul Cox. Coxie has pretended to be a Pompey fan all of his life, but he is ready to come out. Let's hear it for the Cox in the box. That's your Saints news. Laters, Tigers.
There was Edward Hughes with your completely unbiased UK Live online news. Thank God we're not regulated by Portsmouth's version of Ofcom, I say. Well, I had the chance, as soon as I got into this first-class cabin, to be wired up to a very, very, very intelligent, highly knowledgeable, probably nerdier than me, Southampton fan, a football historian, an announcer for many seasons at St Mary's Stadium. He had to get his lips and mouth round all of those funny foreign names. I'm joined now by Tim Manns.
Tim, from 30,000 feet up, I'm hoping I can hear you. How are the devil are things down on terra firma?
Pretty hot, I have to say. As you may know, I lived in the Middle East for 17 years. We're getting towards the temperatures that we used to have back in those days, so it's quite something.
Well, I'm in my beautiful air-conditioned first-class cabin. They've managed to find some more white wine for me, but I'll be hitting the heat of Blighty before too long, Tim. Now, look, I know you through Southampton Football Club. We share that passion, share a general passion for the game. What have you made of this World Cup so far? Because I know for some purists, it's all a bit of a carnival and a festival. It's not kind of real earthy football. But for others, it's the greatest football tournament on earth. Where do you stand on that spectrum?
Well, I started out thinking it's got ridiculously big now. There's too many teams. It's going to be, far too long. But when you see things like Cape Verde, you've got to say, well, good on them. It's nice that they get a seat at the party. And as it's gone on, I've enjoyed it more and more and more, until a certain person poked his nose in and got FIFA to do something which was just reprehensible, really. And I just think, wow, they pricked the bubble. You know, it all felt like it all went flat after that. I don't know what FIFA were thinking, allowing that to happen. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, we've all been agreeing with that on the show, Tim. Got to ask, to what extent do you blame President Trump, and to what extent do you blame FIFA? Because I've been arguing that I think both have acted appallingly. But ultimately, if a president or a prime minister phones up a football regulator or a football body and says, I'm appalled that goal was offside, or I'm shocked that penalty shouldn't have been given, or I can't believe he was sent off, it's an outrage. Well, you might not look fondly on that prime minister or president, but surely the football regulator just says, well, that's an interesting point of view, but it's nothing to do with you, and puts the phone down. It should have been that should have been FIFA's reaction, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think they set their stall out in the sense that when America didn't allow one of the appointed referees a visa to come in, they didn't do anything about it, and I think that made the American, or Trump anyway, think, well, I can do anything. Absolutely. All FIFA had to say was, yeah, well, thanks for your opinion, we take it on board, however, we have rules, they apply to everybody. That's all they had to say, really, wasn't it? I think they just rolled over. It's pathetic.
So you're joining the chorus of billions of us who were cheering on Belgium and think that Belgium have basically saved the tournament by knocking out the Yanks on the pitch,
Exactly
right? That was a necessary result, right?
And isn't it sad? Because up until that point, I think most people around the world were delighted to see the three home nations doing pretty well. I mean, obviously, as England fans, we wanted to beat Mexico. But they all put in a good shift. They all got out their groups, you know. And sadly, that's taken away from everything that the USA achieved, in my opinion.
Yeah. And then the tournament in general then. So you said you've changed your mind a bit on this. Maybe 48 teams is about the right number. It lets those minnows in. You get those fairy tale stories. I mean, one thought I had, if they want to expand it even further, I think there is some suggestion they might go to 64 teams. The problem for that is it makes the qualifying rounds ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Although Italy keeps screwing up, if you've got 64 teams in it, England, a bit like this time, the qualifying stages are just not exciting, right? It's just a question of putting 8 past Liechtenstein or something. But if they made it an even bigger tournament, one thought I had is they could structure it a bit like the FA Cup. So you actually only have the bigger teams joining a bit late. I don't know, you have an initial group stage with the Cape Verdes, the Curaçaos, whatever else. 4 or 5 of them get through, then the big teams join.
Yeah.
But you actually start off the World Cup with the minnows. How's that sound to you?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good idea, although the problem there would be that as far as I can see, Infantino holds his place by currying favour with all the smaller nations, and I think he would lose some of that support if he was to do that. But you've got to stop somewhere. I mean, otherwise it'll be a World Cup with every single nation in the world taking part, won't it? So I don't know. I mean, look, you know, as you get older, you tend to look back at what you remember, and if you're not careful, you think, I don't know if I like this type of progress. But actually, do you know what? When I look back at 1966, wonderful though it was, there was only 16 teams, actually. So there's got to be a happy balance somewhere, you know. But I think that what concerns me more is not the numbers of teams, it's having a World Cup across half the globe. Surely the whole point is you bring everything together in one place, or at the most 3, which is what they've done this time. But to make it different continents, I just find that ridiculous, really. And
yeah, well, that's the next one, right? So the next World Cup's going to be what? Spain, Portugal and Morocco as the principal hosts. But one game in Paraguay, is that where the FIFA headquarters are or something? One game in Argentina for obscure reasons, and one game in Uruguay. Oh, because Uruguay-Argentina was the original World Cup final, and it will be 100 years since the World Cup. Yeah, I mean, at this point, sod it. We just host games all over the world, different time zones. You don't really have a host nation, right?
No, and it loses all focus, doesn't it, really? So, I mean, I don't know. They probably do what they want to do because they're so powerful now. I think the saddest thing is that when FIFA had that really big shake-up, I think a lot of people thought, OK, now they'll get back to what they're there to do and it will clean its act up. But in its own way, it's just as bonkers as it ever was, really.
Oh, worse, I think, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always hated the whiff of, you know, corruption, brown paper envelopes, very dodgy bidding process. I've tried to blank that from my mind. But when they intervene in things like eligibility of players to play a specific key match, that really, really riled me up. What about this club versus country thing? If you're asked that perennial question, would you rather see Saints win the FA Cup again or England win the World Cup? You've seen each one once. which one would you most like to be repeated?
It would be the Saints, although I'd like to see England win the World Cup with the Saints player in the team. I mean, we got close with Terry
Now we're
Penning.
into fantasy land, mate.
Yes, well, yeah. But no, I mean, your club always comes first, doesn't it? I just settled for us getting back up into the Premier League, to be honest with you, because they're going to make it really hard for them now. You can just see what's going to happen next season, can't you? But then maybe that will inspire them, all the stick that they're going to get, I don't know. But yeah, no, I was Saints first, England second, that's me.
Yeah.
I tell you what I was going to say to you. I go back to the 1966 World Cup, that was my first one. And then in the 80s, When Saturday Comes magazine started, and they always do a poster, and this is the highlight of my World Cup every time. I keep the poster, I fill it out one at a time. I used to keep them all, but I've moved house a few times and I've lost most of them now. But to me, it doesn't matter that I'm in my 70s, it's the poster. I love it. I love filling in the results and plotting what's going to happen next. It's
And
just
you
the
keep-
fun of it, really. That's the
You
only
keep
time
Saints programmes as well.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, all of
That's
that
an
stuff.
unusual English curiosity, right? I couldn't believe when I finally went to the Clasico, Real Madrid versus Barcelona. I was assuming I'd buy the merch, buy the programme. They just don't have programmes in Spain. I keep all of those programmes. They are a memory trove and help me look back on different parts of my life at the same time. So what's your take? Look, England have done pretty well. Well, I mean, obviously, still in the tournament. Slightly rocky road in terms of playing some of the weaker teams, but good against Croatia. Great against Mexico in terms of spirit, maybe not so much sort of technical ability. What's your take on it? Could it be 60 years of hurt coming to an end?
It could be. I mean, I think, it's not an original thought to say that it's very rare that the team that wins the World Cup plays brilliantly from game one. They usually build it up as they go. We've got slightly unusual pattern developing here because we actually started well and then we went back. And then we go against Mexico and we really show what we're made of. My great fear is that they now start to believe that publicity, and they don't take Norway seriously enough because they could do another Iceland there, couldn't they? Let's be honest. But right now, you've got to say, well, they've got this far. We haven't got Brazil to worry about. So, if we can get past Norway, then we're looking at potentially Argentina in the semi-final. Who knows?
I think it might be Colombia, actually.
Yeah, well, I'd love to think it would be. Yeah, it really did.
But we had Dean Windass on the show. He actually thought he wanted Brazil to overcome Norway. He's more worried about Norway. Do you think that, folk who've been following football for decades, like you and I, look too much at the kind of legacy? Obviously, Brazil's is absolutely enormous, and a bit less at the starting 11 who you're going to face on any given day.
There
Brazil
is that,
are,
isn't
below
there?
par by their recent history, right?
Yeah,
or by their
there is
lengthy
that.
history, I should say.
Because if you're a new football fan and you never saw Brazil at their height, then you might think, well, what's to worry about, But for me, that 1970 Brazil team was without doubt the greatest football team that ever walked the planet. But I think we would have done okay against Brazil if they had got through. Thankfully, we won't have to find out. I think, do you know what the other thing I think as well is that I wonder whether English footballers look better when they're in their club side because they've got all these, great foreigners around them, and they lose a bit when it's just the England players. I mean, we've got, I would say, 2, potentially 3 world-class players in that team. Is that enough to win a World Cup? I'm not
Kane,
really
Bellingham,
sure.
Rice, is that who you're calling?
Yeah, absolutely right. After that, well, they're good players, very good players, but I don't know whether they're world-class. That's a different thing, isn't it?
So who's your tip? I mean, everybody's saying France the team to beat. I think now the bookies would make the favourites for the final England-France.
Yeah.
So if you go through every permutation and combination, if you like, what the markets are saying is France will win and England will be runners-up.
Yeah.
If you had to put your money on it, is that where you'd go? France to win, but England.
Do you know
to get
what?
to the
If
final?
we got to the final against France, I think something that goes in our favour is that we've been on a steady upward curve, and I think maybe there's nothing to fear with France. They've got a wonderful forward line. If we've got a weakness, I think it's obviously they're dropping like flies in the back four, aren't they? And I don't think they took enough defenders, if I'm honest with you. So I think that could be the problem. Thankfully, Jordan Pickford seems to have found his form after a pretty shaky start. I know it's a cliche, but if they got to the final, who knows? It's a one-off game, isn't it? And if Harry Kane, plays as he can, we could beat them. I wouldn't be scared of France, but I just think it's moments, isn't it? You know, you get that ball that just skims the inside of the post, or it hits the post, and it's as close as that, isn't it, really?
Now, you said club of four countries, so let me leave you with this question. Lots of Saints fans, unsurprisingly, have been on this show. I think our newsreader today has come out as a Saints fan. My co-presenter, Paul Cox, claims to be a Portsmouth fan, but we suspect he's really a Southampton fan. What's your take on how Saints are going to dig themselves out of a hole next season, having been expelled from the Championship playoff finals, starting next season in old money, the second division, on -4 points, but potentially with one of the very best squads in the division?
Yeah, now the way I see it is this, is if they don't get that team and that squad ripped apart, which I don't think they will. I saw so much steel in that side in the second half of last season that if they're the half the bunch of men that I think they are, I think what's happened gives them all the inspiration they need to go and show everybody that they deserve to get to that final. And I actually think they will go up automatically. I think the 4 points, that's not a problem. If it had been 10, maybe that'd be different. So no, I think we're going to do it. I really do. Of course, the other thing is we don't know what's going to happen with Tonda, do we? And I mean, if he's suspended by the FA or the Football League or whatever it might be, I don't even know who's going to make that decision. That's a big problem. But let's hope that doesn't come to that.
We need Donald Trump to lobby for us, Tim. Great
Absolutely.
to speak to you.
Well,
I
you
like
know
the
him, don't you?
prediction.
Can't you get on the phone to him? I thought you were good friends.
Yeah, I'll definitely put a word in. I mean, he let me down a bit over Spygate. I was hoping the president was going to intervene on our behalf. Threaten tariffs against the United Kingdom if Southampton are discriminated against. That's the kind of leadership I want from the leader of the free world, for God's sake.
There you go.
Tim, great to see you. I'll see you next season. Come on, Southampton. Come on, England.
Come on,
all
you
the
Saints.
best. I'm going to get back to my wine and call over the air stewardess for a little bit more. Thanks, Tim. Speak to you soon, mate.
Yeah, take care, Mark. Bye.
Right, well, I'm just going to call the stewardess over again. They've run out of white wine now, so we'll see what you got, love. Another hot flannel. Thanks. God, sweating a bit. Oh, look, I haven't quite drunk them out of red wine yet, so still plenty of alcohol to go on this flight back to Gatwick Airport. But let's bring back in my wingmen, the Foxy Cox in the box, Paul Cox, and the Glindex, Glyn Brailsford. Cox, we're a balanced news channel here on UK Live Online. We give an airing to all sides. Any thoughts on what you heard in the news bulletin there, my friend? You're armchair army, aren't you? Not a proper Portsmouth fan. Slice you open, you're red and white underneath. Is Ed Hughes writing our news bulletin, Cox?
Look, if this was to get out to certain members of my family, particularly the members of family that live on Lee Park, I'd be dead before sundown. This is serious stuff, Mark. I am Pompey through and through. There's no armchair with me. I had a season ticket for 12 years in a row as an adult and 3 years as a row as a child. I support Pompey, and there's nothing red and white in me. Even my blood is blue. And right now, my blood is positively boiling, Mark. I have questions for the House. This is not the end of this.
Paul Cox there is going to give a statement later reappraising his role in public life. We'll bring that to you live on UK Line when he and his family are willing to make that statement. Look, there are no matches in the World Cup on tonight, but don't worry. There is plenty of superb football on, some fantastic matches to get your teeth into. You don't have to wait till Thursday evening. We've got 3 of a series of fantastic games on tonight to preview for you. And let's start with Glyn. What's your pick-out fixture for this evening that we should all be glued to? Because I cannot go through a night without football on television. What have you picked out for me, the Glindex?
Tonight, Mark, I'll only have eyes for the UEFA Conference League first qualifying round. Mouth-watering prospect, isn't it? And I found a new second team, Mark. Football Club Deferdeng, 03. Premier League football club from Luxembourg. And like my beloved Rotherham United, I may have mentioned them earlier, they play in red. And again, like Rotherham, it's a working class industrial steel and mining area. Admittedly, they're in the southwest of Luxembourg, not South Yorkshire, but that's close enough to get my vote. They play their home matches at a lovely stadium. It's called Stade Municipal de la Ville de Deferdeng, and it seats around a mighty 3,500 spectators. As the 03 in the name suggests, They're actually evolved from a merger between two clubs. There was Red Boys Deferdane. They were a giant of Luxembourg football, but hit financial problems. And then a tinier club, AS Deferdane, third tier side. They reached a cup final once. But anyway, they combined forces. They stabilised financially. They worked their way back up and haven't looked back since. In 2024, they won the first ever Luxembourg National Division, and then domestic League and Cup double in 24-25. So pretty good. We talked about highlights and lowlights earlier in the programme. Here's one of both a highlight and a lowlight at one and the same time. In the Red Boys days, they managed an incredible 0-0 draw against Ajax, Dutch giants, right? 0-0. Then they went to Amsterdam and they got thumped 14-0, which is still a UEFA record, I'm afraid. But that's Deferdane. What about their opponents? Well, that's Ilves. They're in the city of Tampere in Finland. It's one of the most historic clubs there. It's also one of those multi-sports clubs, so they have football and basketball and all sorts of other things as well. But let's talk about the football. Again, really similar history, strangely, to Deferdane, in as much as dominance, then financial problems, then resurgence. Their name actually means the Lynxes, and you can see that on their crest, on their shirts. And incidentally, they play in yellow and green, much like Norwich City. Will they be singing like canaries after tonight's match? Sorry, I'm pushing it.
Walking a fine line, Brailsford. Walking fine line.
They've got a brand new state-of-the-art stadium. This one, a massive 8,000, which I'm told with a really good English-style atmosphere. So maybe we'll hop on a plane there someday, Mark, and take in a game. They won the Finnish Cup in 2023, league runners-up in 24, third in 25. How's the game going to play out? Well, the bookies have Deferdane as favourites. They won 13 and drawn 5 of the last 20 matches. Ilves, the away team, they've struggled away from home, only 1 win in 9. So my money on the boys in red. Come on, Deferdane.
There you go. Unmissable. 6:30 kickoff. Tragically, my tip is also a 6:30 kickoff. But I think I'm right in saying that Cox's tip, you'll be able to basically watch one of my matches and one of Glyn's, unless you've got the multi-screens, the setup that I have. If I'm watching the last group stages, you'll have to have my game, which I'll preview in a minute, and Glyn's on 2 screens. But tune in earlier. I think it's a 5 o'clock kickoff for your big match to watch tonight, Cox. What's in Cox's box? Slightly higher level. If it's hard to believe there could be a higher level than Glyn's game, but you're in the Champions League qualifying preliminary round, an even bigger match than Glindex's, right, Paul?
Look, I'm going to provide a lot of information here. I don't want to patronise everybody. I know that the people watching this already know this game's on. Many of us, like me, have been waiting for some time. It doesn't kick off at 5, actually. It kicks off at 4 UK time. It kicks off at 6 in Tallinn, which is in Estonia. And of course, I am talking about FC Flora Tallinn versus FC Iberia 1999. Now, Flora Tallinn come from Estonia, as pre-mentioned. Many of the lonely men that watch our show will be completely aware of Tallinn and Estonia, because for many years it topped the sex tourism location to go during, if you were visiting Europe during the late 2000s into the 2010s. I was unaware of this. This is not something that I'm interested in.
A man who was unaware of it, you seem very clear on the dates, Cox. You seem to be absolutely knowing when the peak tourism season was.
Yes, and I seem to have created a league, which I'm very aware of as well. I seem to be undermining my own point. I hope the current Mrs. Cox is not watching this. But anyway, back to the football. And Flora are Estonia's premium team. They have won 16 league titles and 36 major domestic trophies, and that was just last year. Now, that's not true. It's a bit like the Scottish leagues. I think there's only 1 or 2 teams. In fact, there's only 1 team, and the rest just compete against one another. They were the first Estonian team to reach the group stage of the UEFA competition, the Champions League, that is, doing so UEFA competition, not the Champions League. It was actually the Conference League, and that was in the season 21-22. So just in that COVID area where everyone else was locked down, they managed to sneak in there. And unusually in modern football, Flora have long followed a policy of fielding almost exclusively Estonian players, Mark.
Sound!
This is exactly what you were talking about. It has worked nearly once for Estonia, so this is adding some credence to your potential plan. But FC Iberia. Now, most people watching this will be thinking, wow, that's a Spanish team. Incorrectamundo, as they say somewhere. This club was previously... no, let me just tell you, actually, because that Iberia is actually the area of Europe which is currently known as Georgia. It was not really associated directly to Spain. There is a whole history there, which I'm not going to go into now. This is very much a Glyn's territory, and I don't want to bore the living daylights out of everybody. Not that Glyn does. Winky face emoji. The club was previously known as Sabertola Tazalbi, before rebranding as Iberia 1999. I don't know which year that was, though. It doesn't say. However, they are the biggest. Their biggest European shot came in 2019 when they knocked out FC Sheriff Tiraspol in the Champions League qualifiers. These are all teams that everybody's familiar with. I don't know why I'm struggling to pronounce them as if I'm reading them for the first time. Obviously, I'm supporting Talon, having done some great work there in the late 2000s, early 2010s, Mark.
Great. Well, Paul, I was correct when I said it was a 5 o'clock kickoff, but I have now just crossed time zones in my jet. It was 5 o'clock, obviously Spanish time. So when I said it, I was accurate. It's 4 o'clock UK time. I think I've just crossed in this flight. I'll ask the stewardess to confirm. I think, yeah. So 4 o'clock. We were both right. It's 4 o'clock. So you can take in your match from 4 p.m. And then you could switch over to Glyn's, but I think you should switch over to mine after you've had a little break after that epic Cox recommendation game, because my match is also the Europa League conference qualifying round, and I'm being a bit more domestic here. I am picking from Wales the mighty Connors Quay Nomads. You would have heard of them because they came second in what is badged there locally as the Cymru Premier, but is obviously called on this channel the Welsh Premier League, because we are an English channel, not a Cymru channel. Connors Quay Nomads, runners-up in the Welsh Premier League. They face the mighty Balkani. Balkani, as you all know, are one of the giants of Kosovan football. Kosovo didn't make it to the World Cup this year, but now is your chance to check out the Kosovan talent on the football pitches, if you can still get a ticket to this game. I believe it's being played at Connors Quay Nomads Stadium. Sometimes for these massive matches, they have to move to a different nearby stadium, such is demand and interest. Their stadium has 1,000 capacity. Only 250 of them are seated. Those seats will therefore probably cost you about as much money as my first class return ticket to Gatwick, with a whole studio encamped in the cabin. Balkany are the hot favourites, and I'm not surprised. They have been tearing it up in Kosovo. Rather unlucky to be the runners-up. Second in the Kosovo Super League. You see, over in Kosovo, they use proper English words. They have the bigger stadium. They have probably a bigger fan base. They're the red-hot favourites. My betting tip today is get your money on Balkani to beat Connors Quay Nomads, who some people say are a Mickey Mouse team, but I am having none of that, because the manager of Connors Quay Nomads is one John Disney. How dare you suggest they're a Mickey Mouse team? Switch over to Connors Quay Nomads versus Balkany after you've taken in Cox's game at 4 o'clock. Football never stops, and nor should it. Those are our matches for tonight before we return to the World Cup later in the week. But gents, want to make a serious point out of this. A serious point out of this.
Is this the right show?
Is there just too much football? I know blasphemy to even think that on a football show. Is there too much? One day off in the World Cup, and still, we only previewed 3 of the games. There's about another 5 you can watch, right? Next Monday, there's only 1, by the way. We're going to have to take a big interest in the Swedish Premier Division next Monday, and I know we all will. What do you reckon, Paul? Is this just getting a bit crazy? One day off from football, or is this like heroin to us? You can't possibly go a day without it.
Well, yes, heroin indeed. I will never complain that there's too much football. I absolutely love it. I have this kind of post-World Cup, post-big sports competition blues that often happens because it's just become so ubiquitous within our life. You know, the first thing I do when I wake up is try and remember what I saw yesterday. So try and get that thought together in my mind, then speak to you on the phone, and then the show's on and we're talking about it again, and then we're looking ahead in the afternoon. This to me has become life now for the period of the World Cup, and I'm more than happy to accept that as my new life. I don't want it to go away. I think under the ECHR, I should be able to watch as much football as I want. In fact, I've changed my whole view on the ECHR. We mustn't rescind it. We just need it to include as much football as possible. And I'm now on the phone to a human rights lawyer to back me up. And there are millions of them grifting away, ready to help me.
I quite like this idea, so I'm now starting to lean into the Human Rights Act. I don't think we need to leave the European Convention of Human Rights. I just think we need a small amendment to Article 8, which says that you are entitled to privacy under family life. We just remove the word family and replace with the word football, don't we? We make it absolutely plain that under Article 8 of the Human Rights Act, every single person is entitled to privacy. Which, given what we've just heard about Cox's tourism back in the early noughties, I think he's more than entitled to. You're entitled to privacy and a football life, not a family life. An article of the Human Rights Act designed entirely to protect Paul Cox. Glindex, what do you make of it? Is there too much football? Can there be such a thing as too much football? One of my big football heroes, Alan Ball, God rest his soul, 1966 hero, went on to be a great manager for the Saints. But he once said he wouldn't be happy until football was on television 24/7. We're nearly there if you're looking down on us, Alan Ball. We're nearly there. Good thing or bad thing, Clint?
Good thing for me, Mark. I'm going to have PTSD, post-tournament stress disorder. I mean, what are we going to do? We're grasping at straws already. Looking at Defending tonight. Looking at the Georgians. By the way, Coxie, if the Georgians win, are they going to party like it's 1999?
Oh, right. All yellow cards back. And
I wanted you to sing along.
Yellow. Are you reaching for the yellow?
Yeah.
No, Mark. I can't get enough. People say there are other sports, but I go, are there? I just want football. Apparently there's a tennis tournament going on this week, but it doesn't mean anything to me. Test matches?
Yeah, well, I sort of follow Wimbledon, but I find I only follow it in not in even numbered years, but in odd numbered years. I completely forget it's going on in even numbered years, right? I don't think I've seen a single serve or a single double full. All right, let me put the counter case here. God knows why I'm doing this as an anchorman on a channel about football, arguing that there's too much bloody football for crying out loud.
I see the flaw in your argument.
Let me give it a go. Let me give it a go. Does it kind of crowd out other sports, and should we care? So way back in the day, if you want to be kind of old school about it, top English sportsmen would play football during the winter and cricket during the summer. You kind of multitasked, right? And you had a whole bunch of elite athletes who had just changed the sport. Football is now basically a 52-week-a-year endeavour, right? So you would only be a footballer. Didn't Ian Botham play football at some point?
Scunthorpe United.
Stockport County.
Scunthorpe United.
Scunthorpe, okay, Scunthorpe United. Look, are you dissing Ian Botham then? You see, so if you actually crunched football, you have kind of intense periods of football. 6 months. We're going to do it 6 months from, I don't know, August through to, March, something like that. So expand it a little bit. Then, these players could go and play other sports. Or do we want a monopoly of football? Clearly the biggest and the best sport that mankind's ever invented. But do you think it's weakening us at cricket, tennis, athletics, anything else that the three of us don't really give a toss about? Paul?
No, I don't think it does weaken. These things all happen simultaneously, even though we're entirely unaware of them. I assume they've got audiences in the tens. I've no idea. But their sports are happening. Cricket, tennis. I'm a big golf player. Big is my waist size, obviously. But I am a golf player. I play at least twice a week, particularly this time of year. I'm a member of a golf club on Hayling Island, which is a beautiful part on the south coast, nowhere near Southampton. Fortunately, can't even see it from there. You can only see Portsmouth and West Witterings. And what else do you need to be able to see? Let's face it. But no, I think these things can exist at the same time, simultaneously, and therefore, no. Carry on. More football. I do miss the days, not that I remember them, this is for Glyn really, when football players did also play cricket in the summer, but that sounds great. Take the shorts off, put the trousers on, off we go, chaps.
Yeah, Glyn, any other thoughts on that? It's just impossible to have too much football. So we should make it the norm that, Mexico versus England shouldn't be the exception. We should typically have a match on at 2:00 in the morning every night and keep the pubs open so people can go watch it and have even more bloody drinks than I've had in my first class cabin here, which is just going down very, very sweetly. Is that a way to go? 2 a.m. games every day, compulsory under my new Article 8 of the Human Rights Act.
If I ever heard a vote winner, that's it, Mark. I'm there for that one. I want to see every single game I possibly can. Scunthorpe United had played on their ground, actually, got booed, called me baldy, but there we are. It's one of the pitches I played on.
There you go, back in the day when you were a pro. Look, gents, been great to spend another hour in your company while you're on terra firma. We've got a little bit of a problem here. We are coming in to land. Join Mike tomorrow at 7 a.m. Then switch to UK Live on 10 a.m. If I make it, I'll be back with you at noon. Okay, see me for my next World Cuppa then, if the landing's okay. Laters, Tigers.